Chapter 5140. In the surrounding void of black light, those crisscrossing iron chains began to collide violently. The hurricane swept, and the Inchi spread. The strong, malicious intent was like a bloody mouth opened wide, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it let out a clamorous roar. Yiqing Luo was shaken so much that she took a step back, raising her eyes to look at the man with vigilance. She should be glad that this castle seemed to be frozen. Other than the surrounding black light that would float, there was nothing else. So when the hurricane swept, she was only filled with Inchi and malicious cold wind, directly blowing towards her face. It wasn't like those kinds of big moves after the formation was activated, like flying sand and gravel all over the sky or whatever tornado sweeping. After Yiqing Luo stabilized herself, her long and narrow eyes narrowed dangerously. After that, her fingertips moved. A raging flame feather fan appeared from the palm of her hand. Her nimble fingers moved slightly. The raging flame red light instantly gathered towards the glower flame fan. Even the power of the divine weapon that had seeped into the man's body also turned back at an extremely fast speed. Clatter, clatter. The huge iron chain swayed crazily, as if in the next moment it would split open. Even in the void of black light, the complex intertwining iron chain swayed incessantly, as if it was angry about something. Yiqing Luo's red lips curled up in a mocking and sarcastic manner. Her charming eyes looked at the man with some traces of ridicule. This man, indeed, was trying to trick her. Luckily, she kept an eye on him, knew that he needed to rely on the vast water divine weapon's power to be able to break the seal. So in the beginning, she only injected a little vast water divine weapon's power to test him. As expected, he actually wanted to take the opportunity to directly devour her. Heh, did he really think she was stupid? Looks like you don't need my help. Yiqing Luo's voice was icy cold, with a hint of sarcasm. And as Yiqing Luo drew out the last trace of the divine weapon's power, that violently swaying iron chain finally stopped. Following that, there was a strong malicious intent surrounding her, like a threat, like a warning. Yiqing Luo was expressionless and unmoved. She took 2 steps back until she was out of the range of the chains. Only then did she casually sit down cross-legged. I haven't even undone the seal, and you already want to take my life. If I help you undo the seal, do you think I can still live? She sneered. I don't trust you now, so the deal we made before is invalid. That intense malicious intent surged even more violently. The entire ball of dense black light wrapped around her body. However, before he could get close, the azure dew bracelet would gush out a fiery red light, directly blocking off the malicious corrosion. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she looked at the man with a gaze filled with ridicule. Still trying to act? I don't mind staying here to see how long you can keep up the act. She leisurely looked down at the glowing flame fan in her fingertips. Her slender and fair fingers held onto the glowing flame fan as she casually tapped it. She was completely unresponsive to the man's malice and the chilling aura, until after the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Crash! The sound of the huge iron chain hitting the ground. A violent hurricane swept through the entire castle's main hall. First, it was a very slight sound. Following that, it began to violently collide. Compared to earlier, when Yiqing Luo poured the divine weapon's power into the man, the sound was even louder. When did you find out? A bone-chilling voice, as if it came from hell, resounded through the main hall. Yiqing Luo listened to this voice and felt her hair stand on end. 7th Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. 7th Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5141. She slowly raised her eyes. Her long and narrow eyes were filled with some mischievousness as she looked at the man who was restrained by the iron chain. Their eyes met. Yiqing Luo had a moment of astonishment. That was a pair of deep and cold, as if hiding the world's endless killing and sin. Eyes. Black, extremely black. Evil, extremely evil. Evil, extremely evil. Just the four eyes met. Yiqing Luo felt that her body and mind, even her soul, seemed to have a cold current spreading to her limbs and bones. It made her feel a kind of unbearable pressure. That was that man, the man who was restrained by the iron chain. Yiqing Luo also clearly saw that face hidden under the messy long hair. It was completely different from what she imagined. That could no longer be called a human face. The man's face, which was the side of his face that she saw at the beginning, was indeed handsome, sword-like brows raised, eyes full of malice, revealing the coldness of killing and sin. But, on the other side, it made one's hair stand. That side of the face was covered with black scales, one after another, densely covering half of the face. The color of his lips was not the red of a human, but kind of purplish-black, as if it was poisoned. Yiqing Luo's slender brows frowned slightly. No wonder you're the new owner of the vast water divine weapon. The man's cold voice rang. That pair of malicious eyes sized up Yiqing Luo. After seeing this lord's face, you can still maintain your composure. But you're really ugly and quite scary. Yiqing Luo objectively evaluated. The man laughed loudly, laughing so much that Yiqing Luo felt like the mountains were collapsing, especially when he laughed, that half of the face full of black scales twisted together, looking even more terrifying. You're the descendant of that woman, Fengge? After the man finished laughing, he stared at Yiqing Luo, sizing her up. It's been thousands of years, I don't know how many generations have passed, but you still look like that woman. This man really knew Fengge. That also meant this man, at least thousands of years ago, when her mother was still alive. Old monster, Yiqing Luo. She's my mother. The man's eyes, which were filled with malice, were momentarily stunned. Then he stared at Yiqing Luo, sizing her up from head to toe. Are you lying to me? I've read countless women. How could I not see that you're just a 15 or 16-year-old girl? Moreover, if you were that woman's daughter, would you be so weak? Yiqing Luo. It's up to you to believe or not. It was one thing to suspect that she wasn't her mother's daughter, but there was no need to attack her personally, right? The man stared at Yiqing Luo for quite some time. Even the chains on his four limbs kept shaking. Finally, they were able to ascertain Yiqing Luo's age. Thinking that Yiqing Luo was lying to him, he asked his doubts again. How did you know that I am actually conscious? Furthermore, it was so timely that it prevented me from devouring it. I guessed it. Yiqing Luo replied carelessly. The man frowned slightly, and the black scales on his palm gathered together again. You guessed it. At that time, she had made a solemn vow, confident that she would be able to drag it out with him. It was actually guessed it. Yiqing Luo nodded. Just a casual guess. If you have really regained your consciousness, and I'm staring at you, after a long time, you won't be able to maintain a single movement. I didn't expect you to be so impatient. Then what if I actually haven't regained my consciousness? The man felt stuffy. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5142. Yiqing Luo casually lifted her eyelids. If you don't, then so be it. It's just a waste of time. This seat can spend another 10,000 years here. You, a human, without any food here, can you outlast this seat? The malevolence in the man's eyes intensified. Yiqing Luo sneered at him. I'm not stupid. I'll wait for a while. If you really don't regain consciousness, I'll leave. Do you think, after entering here, you can still get out? The man sneered. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. If I don't try, how would I know? She indifferently leaned back and lazily lifted her eyelids. What's more, I made the right bet, haven't I? The man's dark and gloomy face, that half of his face with black scales, seemed to have waves of scales floating. You're smart. You flatter me, Yiqing Luo bluntly admitted. The man's treacherous, murderous eyes began to scrutinize Yiqing Luo bit by bit. Finally, it landed on her wrist. That azure dew bracelet with cherry blossoms, dazzling red light, like a burning fire. He said, "What do you want to help this seat to undo this array?" Yi Ching Luo tilted her head, opened a pair of innocent and harmless eyes, and replied seriously, "Earlier, if I wasn't smart, I'm afraid my Azure Dew artifact would have been swallowed by you. A person who wants my life, why should I save him?" She blinked her eyes, which were as bright as the stars in the sky, and there was a harmless light circulating in them. She smiled. "If it were you, would you be willing?" A strong, murderous aura suddenly rose from the man's body. That horrifying face also twisted into a horrifying expression. His poisoned, purplish-black lips curled up sinisterly and said word by word coldly, "Feng family's descendant, you have no choice. You can only leave this place if you undo this hall's array. Otherwise, you'll be trapped here with this seat." The man's malicious intent and the dense, evil aura didn't affect the young lady in the slightest. The girl's eyes were calm. Her bright red lips curled up in a very casual manner. "Oh, it doesn't matter. I'll die if I save you, and I'll die if I don't. I might as well not save you. At least, if I die, you'll still be sealed." The man, this young girl, was simply a marvel. It was one thing for him to not be afraid of the evil aura he was emitting. His words could choke someone to death. Clearly, his attempt to forcefully devour the young girl's power had completely angered her. In the depths of the man's eyes, a whirlpool surged, and then it stopped. The sound of the huge chains around him also became slightly softer. He patiently said, "Then, what do you want? This is how you should ask for help." The girl nodded in satisfaction. Her bright red lips curled into a gratified smile. "At the very least, you should show me your sincerity. You came here for the Divine Emperor's tomb, right?" The man was stating a fact, not a question. The smile on Yi Ching Luo's face instantly froze. The Divine Emperor's tomb? What did the Divine Emperor's tomb and this array have to do with him? The man was keenly aware that the expression on the young girl's face was not right. He sneered. "That woman's descendant came here not to enter her tomb. Waste 7th Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Waste 7th Miss. Overlord, please be gentle." 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5143. She's truly a failure. Even her descendants didn't think of paying their respects to her. "What did you say?" Yi Ching Luo interrupted the man's sneer as she stared into his eyes and asked word by word, "This is the Divine Emperor's tomb?" The man's eyes, filled with malice, suddenly curved sinisterly. "Did I say that again?" Yi Ching Luo's heart pounded wildly. Her fair and delicate fingers were tightly clenched. His palms were covered in cold sweat. She forcefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva and forcefully suppressed the excitement in her chest. Her purpose in coming to the infernal domain was for the Divine Emperor's tomb, to find her mother's tomb chamber. Following the mysterious flames Dubby diagram all the way, he only found the demon domain. The next clue was the demon dragon's lair. This was because they could not find any information about the demon dragon in the demon domain. There was no progress in searching for the Divine Emperor's tomb. But unexpectedly, it was an accident. She had news about the tomb of the Divine Emperor. Yi Ching Luo's long and narrow eyes were fixated on the man who was restrained by the iron chains. "Is this the demon dragon's lair?" When he heard Yi Ching Luo's question, that sinister-looking man who was waiting for Yi Ching Luo to ask congealed his expression. His eyes were filled with bloodlust and viciousness, and they were filled with killing intent. "Mystic Dragon. It's been a long time since I've heard this title," he said. His voice was dark, hoarse, and somewhat piercing. The guess in Yi Ching Luo's heart was verified after the man said this sentence. She looked at the man and suddenly smiled. "So you are the Mystic Dragon." No wonder this man's body was filled with endless murderous intent. Anyone who got close to him would be corroded by the Een energy around him. No wonder half of this man's face was covered in scales. Those were dragon scales, the so-called demon dragon's lair. He was referring to the place where the Mystic Dragon King, the man in front of him, was sealed. This was an ancient castle. That's right, I am the one who caused people to tremble in fear 10,000 years ago the one who stood above the realms, the Devil Dragon King, Long Outyin. The man raised his eyebrows, his gaze deep and cold. His eyes were filled with malice, arrogant and flamboyant. But when he heard that name, Yiqing Luo almost choked. What? Was she hallucinating? Did she hear it wrong? What was the name of this demon dragon king? Long Outyin. So explosive, so Mary Sue, so casual. Yiqing Luo was flustered in the wind. To be honest, the name Long Outyin and his identity as the demonic dragon king were a perfect match. It was just as cool and arrogant. But she really had no choice but to look directly at this name. This name almost made her heart, which had been excited about finding the demonic dragon's lair, calm down. Looking at Yiqing Luo's constipated expression, the man, Long Ao Tian, stared at her maliciously. Have you heard of my name? Yiqing Luo. She had heard it countless of times, all kinds of versions of Long Outyin. She adjusted the expression on her face, curled her lips, and very seriously praised. The name is very nice. It suits your temperament. Of course, Long Outyin sneered. Back then, I was invincible in every realm. Then why are you sealed here now? Yiqing Luo listened to his boasting expressionlessly. Long Outyin, that is because I lost the bet with that woman, so I willingly stayed here. Since you are willing, what else do you need me to help you with? Yiqing Luo continued to be expressionless. She was either expressionless or unable to hold back her laughter. Waste 7th miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Waste 7th miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5144. As though Yiqing Luo had poked his sore spot, Long Outyin's entire body rolled up a gust of chilly yin-shi, rushing towards Yiqing Luo's face. That sinister, malicious, and terrifying face was also filled with anger. His malicious eyes stared at her fiercely. Yiqing Luo continued to stab him expressionlessly. Why do I feel that you can't beat my mother? So you were sealed in this formation. Long Outyin heard the way Yiqing Luo addressed Feng Ge. His gaze was strange. That woman is really your mother? Could it be your mother? Yiqing Luo asked expressionlessly. Long Outyin retorted, how can you say that? How could that woman be my mother? Yiqing Luo. Mother, it felt like he was scolding someone. She felt that ever since she knew the name of this demon dragon king, the entire scene had changed. Previously, she thought that this man was filled with murderous and malevolent yin-shi, and he would fly into a rage at any disagreement, was an extremely cold, strong man. But when he opened his mouth, Yiqing Luo felt that. He was an idiot, and the kind of idiot with a childish temperament. Anyway, from his conversation with her, Yiqing Luo totally couldn't sense that this was a devil dragon king who killed without batting an eyelid and was filled with killing and blood stench. My mother sealed you here because... She paused slightly, and her tone was hesitant. To guard the entrance to the Divine Emperor's tomb. The profound flame Tianshu diagram indicated that the entrance to the Divine Emperor's tomb was in the demon dragon's lair, which was the place where Long Outyin was sealed. In addition to what Long Outyin said, he was sealed here because of a bet with Feng Ge. Yiqing Luo had a very bold guess. This Long Outyin was the demon dragon king. In fact, he was the guardian of the Divine Emperor's tomb entrance. Previously, when she and DMO Xian broke the array to enter the Nether Palace's secret force, they had neglected the fact that under the Nether Palace's array was the array which had sucked her in. It was probably the formation that her mother had set up that year, and the reason why she was sucked into the formation, but DMO Xian didn't come over. Probably because she was Feng Ji's daughter. Feng Ji's blood flowed in her. Most importantly, she had the vast water divine relic. This was the key to unlocking Long Outyin's formation. Thinking about it this way, all his previous doubts have been resolved. Guard the tomb of the Divine Emperor? I'm a high and mighty demonic dragon. How could I guard that woman's tomb? Long Outyin spat on the ground. If that woman hadn't tricked me and caused me to lose the bet, I wouldn't have been sealed here. He was fuming with anger as he stared at Yi Qing Luo. Since you're that woman's daughter, then release the seal for me. This seat is already sick of staying in this damn place. Yi Qing Luo beamed as she stated her conditions. I want to enter the divine emperor's tomb. Go in if you want. What do you want to talk to me about? Long Out Yin's eyes were filled with malice, and there was a cold glint in them. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head as she put on a serious look. But I don't know how to go in. How would I know? Long Out Yin replied snappily. Yi Qing Luo spread out her hands with a helpless look. Then there's no other way. Since you're unable to fulfill my request, then there's nothing for us to discuss. Saying that, she brushed her peach red dress and stood up slowly. The peach red dress was like peach blossom petals, which accentuated the young lady's outstanding figure. Long Out Yin stared straight at her as his voice lowered. You're really the woman's daughter. You look so alike. Chapter 5145. Yi Qing Luo met Long Out Yin's gaze, ignoring the malicious intent in his eyes. Do you really think that if I don't undo your seal, I won't be able to get out of here? The young lady's tone was soft, with a hint of careless provocation. Long Out Yin, absent-minded for a moment, suddenly regained his senses. He frowned. You can get out? Yi Qing Luo smiled sweetly. Her slender fingers brushed past the azure dew bracelet on her wrist. Since this is the seal set by my mother, and the method to break the array requires my azure dew artifact, then, with the azure dew artifact, it shouldn't be difficult for me to leave this place, right? Her lips curled as she smiled casually. I should thank you for helping me find my mother's tomb. The vicious aura around Long Out Yin once again surged violently. The killing intent and blood on him seemed to cover the entire main hall of the castle. How dare you? The icy cold words seemed to seep into a large area of cold yin qi on Yi Qing Luo's body. Yi Qing Luo frowned, raised her hand, and the glower flame fan spread out. The blazing red light lingered around her, shrouding her, dispersing the yin qi released by Long Out Yin. Are you threatening me? Yi Qing Luo crossed her arms, looked at him calmly, and kindly reminded him, Long Out Yin, now you need my help. Long Out Yin was enraged. His eyes were filled with evil intent, and they were filled with a chilly rage. He clenched his fists. Half of his face, which was covered in scales, twisted and moved, as if the scales were floating. It made people who saw it had a shocking déjà vu. You and that woman are really alike, the same, despicable and shameless. He was practically gritting his teeth as he spoke. Yi Qing Luo accepted this compliment with a smile. I'm just standing on my side. What I did was to ensure my own safety. She paused as her tone became sarcastic. After all, you are someone who wants to devour me. How could I possibly be at ease with you? No matter what the reason was for Long Out Yin's action earlier, there was no way to explain, no way to clear his name. It was true that he wanted to kill her heart. How could she have created such a huge problem for herself? You can enter the divine emperor's tomb. Long Out Yin finally relented. But he hadn't even spoken his conditions. The young girl's lips curled up, and her pink lips parted slightly as she interrupted him. I'll enter the divine sovereign's tomb first, and then I'll consider undoing your seal. Otherwise, there's no need for that. How could she not know what Long Out Yin wanted to say? Didn't he just want her to break the seal first before he brought her into the divine emperor's tomb? She was not a fool. Who would believe him? He's a rotten old man, very bad. How do I know that you won't lie to me? Long Out Yin refused without hesitation. Yi Qing Luo smiled confidently with a hint of provocation. But, Devil Dragon King, you don't have any leeway to choose. She lifted a strand of hair that was draped over her shoulder and twined it around her slender fingertips. You're the one who's at a disadvantage right now, so I'm the one in control. You can only choose to trust me. Either you trust me, or we part ways here. She didn't sound too enthusiastic, as though she wasn't very interested in Long Out Yin's reply. That indifferent attitude, it made Long Out Yin so angry that his entire face turned black. He gritted his teeth as he stared angrily at Yi Qing Luo. You lass, you really don't want to be at a disadvantage. The price of being at a disadvantage is my life. Yi Qing Luo smiled calmly. Chapter 5146. Long Out Yin's eyes were filled with malice, and his gaze was cold and ruthless. He hadn't even calmed down completely from the rage brought by the young girl. What she said next made Long Out Yin's face darken even more. You destroyed the trust with your own hands. You no longer have the right to negotiate. Long Out Yin's evil and murderous aura intertwined in the air. Finally, it was time for peace. His purplish-red lips spat out a single word, "All right." It was indeed as what Yi Qing Luo said. He had no choice. Yi Qing Luo curled her lips in satisfaction. You won't regret this decision of yours. Long Out Yin gritted his teeth. I hope so. This was probably the second time in Long Out Yin's life that he had been humiliated. Moreover, it was the kind that could not resist at all. The first time was Fengge. The second time was Yi Qing Luo. Looking at Long Ao Tian's stare, Yi Qing Luo could roughly guess his inner thoughts. She raised her hand and touched her face with her slender fingers. She asked the question that had been bothering her for a long time. You seem to be able to tell that I'm in disguise? Ever since Long Out Yin had mentioned that she resembled Fengge, she had been wondering about it. She was in disguise now. Although Ji Wuhua's disguise was the same as using the same facial features to create a different face, Ji Wuhua's facial features were the same. However, there was still a huge gap between him and Fengge. However, Long Out Yin could tell that she resembled Fengge at first glance. This meant that Long Out Yin had seen her as the real her. Long Out Yin rolled his eyes. How can I not see through such a low-level disguise technique? When I look at people, I look at their souls. Yi Qing Luo, you're amazing. Long Out Yin snorted coldly. Hand it over. I'll send you to the Emperor God's tomb right now. Things? What the hell? Yi Qing Luo expressed her stupefaction. Long Out Yin furrowed his brows. Dark mirror. Take out the dark mirror. Nether mirror? Yi Qing Luo thought for some time before she reacted. It was the nether mirror she had taken from Netherworld, a subordinate of the Palace of Dark Shadow in the 21st world. Yi Qing Luo took out the Ming mirror. In the next instant, the thick black mist sucked the nether mirror over. The nether mirror floated above Long Out Yin's head. Endless black Yin energy washed over the nether mirror. Done. The chains binding Long Out Yin's body rattled. I've opened the entrance to the God Emperor's tomb. Release my seal now. Yi Qing Luo stared at that suspended mirror. In the nether mirror, Yin Qi surged. One could vaguely see a floating figure in the nether mirror. On the floating island. He looked very familiar. She had once, when the Palace of Gloom tried to find the Divine Emperor's tomb through her, she had hidden her consciousness outside the chamber of the Divine Emperor's tomb. The floating island she saw was exactly the same. It was the floating island that contained the Divine Sovereign's tomb. This meant that Long Out Yin was not lying. She squinted her eyes and looked at Long Out Yin. Why are you the guardian of the Divine Emperor's tomb? Since his mother asked him to guard the Divine Emperor's tomb. Was it because of trust? Or was it because the murderous aura on him was enough to suppress the power of the Divine Emperor's tomb? This was to prevent the existence of the Divine Emperor's tomb from being leaked out. However, no matter what it was, she didn't intend to release Long Out Yin's array just like that. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted slightly. Following that, her feet moved. The secret art of blink movement was exhibited. She had already passed through the Yin energy released by Long Out Yin and leapt into the nether mirror. Chapter 5147. Behind her, Long Out Yin bellowed in exasperation. You wicked woman. Finally, Yi Qing Luo could no longer hear Long Out Yin's howls. After entering the mirror, her body fell down weightlessly. Finally, she landed on a floating island. She stabilized herself and surveyed the surroundings. Indeed, it was that familiar majestic tomb. But as compared to before, when she entered the consciousness tomb through the murals on the stone wall, now, she could clearly feel that her feet were stepping on this greenish-black stone slab. The grave's Yin Qi lingered around her, swallowing her with its fangs and claws. The treacherous red mist that filled the sky was also clear and close. Her senses were extremely deep, and it covered her eyes. It gave her a creepy feeling. This tomb was exactly the same as in her memory. Her heart suddenly pounded wildly, as though something was about to overflow from her chest. That feeling, she didn't know how to describe it. It was like she could sense that in the tomb, there was a feeling that made her extremely excited, and her eyes were turning sour. She knew that came from the connection between her and her mother. This was her and the mother whom she had no memories of for the first time. Such a close distance connection. Excited and apprehensive. Excited and reserved. Yiqing Luo nervously clenched her slender fingers as she took a deep breath. Following that, step by step, she walked towards the tomb's stone door. Regarding the tomb's layout, Yi Zichen was stunned. She was already familiar with it. When she reached the stone door, Yiqing Luo raised her head as she looked at the stone door. That was an extremely obvious, carved human-shaped totem. It wasn't like the indistinct silhouette in her memory. Instead, it was reflected in her eyes extremely clearly. The silhouette was obvious, lifelike. She seemed to be able to see it. That holy and elegant lady dressed in a fiery red dress was standing right in front of her. Their eyes were facing each other. That kind of gentleness and elegance made her heart race uncontrollably. She stared at that clear face in a daze as her fingertips touched that cold stone door. Her pink lips moved slightly as her hoarse voice spat out a word. Mother. Just one word, choked with sobs. The moment she finished speaking, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. The cold stone door suddenly glowed with an extremely intense red light. That red light was extremely dazzling. Yiqing Luo regained her senses and looked at the stone door, which was emitting red rays, in astonishment. It was rather adorable. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and put the azure water divine weapon up. Old man Song's impatient, urging voice could be heard beside his ear. Perhaps it was your call that awakened the divine emperor's obsession with you before he passed away. If I rush in now, I might still have a chance to see the remnant will of the god monarch. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as her pupils contracted. She hurriedly took off the azure water 5-piece set. The girl's slender fingers trembled slightly. Holding the azure water divine weapon, he pressed it into the stone door, and it floated around the human-shaped totem in the shape of the 5 accessories. Because he was nervous, she missed several times. Finally, the 5 divine artifacts were all embedded in the totems. She pursed her lips, and with a flick of her finger, a drop of blood gushed out. She placed her blood on the totem. After that, Yiqing Luo only felt a gush of warm spring energy slowly flowing through her limbs and bones, as if there was a pair of warm arms gently embracing her body, as if it could gently accommodate her everything. Trash, 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash, 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5148. It was so strange, yet so familiar. This feeling was totally different from before. It wasn't that she hadn't tried to touch this stone door before. However, the power of the stone door made her feel extremely uncomfortable and painful, although it was all for her own good. But now, it was so warm that her heart was in a mess. It made her not want to open her eyes, only wanted to sink into this pair of warm arms, to enjoy the only warm moment that belonged to her and her mother. It seemed to have sensed Yiqing Luo's thoughts. That pair of warm arms gently patted her head. Yiqing Luo, even vaguely, seemed to hear an ethereal and gentle low laugh, like a warm breeze brushing past her ears. It warmed her body and mind. Yiqing Luo endured the sourness of her nose and murmured, "Mother," that ethereal and gentle low laugh, melodious. Vaguely, she seemed to hear a voice, gently saying to her, "Go, child." By the time Yiqing Luo regained her senses, she was already standing in the dark tomb chamber. Mother? Yiqing Luo turned around and looked around trying to find that familiar yet strange figure. But the surroundings were pitch black, and there was no energy fluctuation. Only her voice reverberated in the tomb chamber. It was not like what she had imagined. The moment she entered the tomb chamber, she would see her mother's remaining obsession. But she could feel that there was a pair of warm eyes, looking at her gently, looking at her. Her mother was still by her side. Yi-Ching Luo tightened her slender fingers to calm herself down. Since she had already entered the Divine Emperor's tomb, her mother's tomb chamber, it was not far from her reunion with her mother. Yi-Ching Luo took out a luminous pearl and was ready to find the way to the tomb chamber. When the luminous pearl shone on the surrounding scene, Yi-Ching Luo was stunned. She was now in a deep and long cave. That was not the point. The point was, why did the surrounding environment look so familiar? Why did it feel she seemed to have been here several times? She had an eidetic memory. Yi-Ching Luo could almost ascertain where she was at right now. Here, wasn't it the Yi family ancestor's tomb that she had been to before? Yes, the tomb of the Yi clan's ancestor. Before she had transmigrated, she had been tricked by a group of Yi clan elders into going in to look for the Azure Dew bracelet. She had made a trip into the tomb of the Yi clan ancestors. That was the tomb of the Yi family's ancestors that she had entered in the 21st century because of the vast water divine artifact. Why was his mother's tomb so similar to the tomb of the Yi family's ancestors? Yi-Ching Luo harbored such a perturbed heart as she followed her memory and walked towards the inside of the tomb, which was the place where the coffin was placed. Everything was exactly the same as what he remembered. The formation in the tomb chamber that extended in all directions was also the same. Even with her eyes closed, Yi-Ching Luo was still able to move forward accurately. As expected, "You've returned." A gloomy voice came from not far away. That faint and cold tone seemed to ripple out in the tomb chamber. When it entered Yi-Ching Luo's ears, it made Yi-Ching Luo feel a chill from head to toe. Yi-Ching Luo stopped in her tracks and accurately located the direction of the voice. The expression on her face had some subtle changes. "Old Mu, long time no see." The owner of that voice was the tomb guardian of the Yi family's ancestors' tomb. Yi-Ching Luo had met him twice before. Waste 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Waste 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5149. When she saw the graveyard guardian, Yi-Ching Luo was completely certain. This place was indeed the Yi family's ancestors' tomb. No, or rather, the so-called Yi family's ancestors' tomb had always been the God Emperor's tomb. But the previous Yi family's ancestors' tomb was what her mother wanted her to see, an ordinary Yi family's ancestors' tomb. Yi-Ching Luo looked at the graveyard guardian, which had floated in front of her. In her memory, it had a fiery temper, the old tomb which would smack her head if there was a disagreement. But the current hymn had a deep and solemn expression. It stared at Yi-Ching Luo. Its brows were filled with melancholy. Finally, it sighed. "I knew long ago there'd be such a day." It turned around and floated back the way it came. "The God Emperor's tomb will eventually appear, and you will eventually awaken the God Emperor's power. Fate really can't be avoided." Yi-Ching Luo didn't really understand what he meant by those confusing words. The graveyard guardian's spiritual body floated very slowly. Yi-Ching Luo followed behind it, pursed her lips slightly and asked, "Old tomb, what you've been guarding right from the start is my mother's tomb, which is the God Emperor's tomb, right?" The graveyard guardian laughed lightly. "Haven't you already guessed it when you stepped into this place?" It floated forward and said, "At the right time, you will be able to open the real tomb's door, and this is your unavoidable fate. The God Emperor's Emperor has really put in a lot of effort for you." Yi-Ching Luo could hear the deeper meaning in the graveyard guardian's words. She roughly understood some of it. The graveyard guardian's ultimate motive for guarding the God Emperor's tomb was to wait for her to awaken. Previously, she had come to this motive twice. It was all because the God Emperor's Emperor wanted her to see it, and to let her slowly understand her own identity. He used this method to deliver what the Emperor of the Divine Emperor wanted to give to her. And this time, to find the God Emperor's tomb and use the Azure Aqua artifact to open the God Emperor's tomb, which was the real, unlocking the seal of the God Emperor's tomb. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes slightly, looking at the cherry blossom azure aqua bracelet on her wrist. She curls her lips and says, I know, my mother has always loved me, even though Feng Gu did not exist in her memories. But everything Feng Gu had done, she could clearly feel Feng Ji's love. Her mother, even when he passed away, he had arranged everything for her clearly. We're here. The Graveyard Guardian's spiritual body stopped leading the way. Yiqing Luo paused. It seemed that they had not reached the coffin area of the inner circle. Following the sight of the Graveyard Guardian, Yiqing Luo saw, in front, on the right side of the coffin, there was a narrow hole that could only fit one person. The Divine Emperor's tomb has been opened, and the seal is gradually being removed. The Graveyard Guardian's voice was light. Hurry up and go in. The power of the God Emperor needs you to inherit it. In other words, when the seal on the tomb of the Divine Emperor was lifted, everyone in the outside world would know the location of the Divine Emperor's tomb. Yiqing Luo was very clear that the inheritance power of the Divine Emperor and the things in the Divine Emperor's tomb. How many people in the outside world were thinking of ways to plunder? Especially Umbra Palace. One must know that Umbra Palace's motive right from the start was the Divine Emperor's tomb. Not to mention, there were countless other forces. Even when DMO Xian went to the lower realm, Nirvana realm, it was also for the Profound Flame Tianshu map, which was the map to the Divine Emperor's tomb. Trash 7th Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash 7th Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5150. So, how many people were interested in the whereabouts of the Divine Emperor's tomb? She must complete her mother's wish for her to inherit the power of the Divine Emperor before the seal of the Divine Emperor's tomb was completely lifted. Yiqing Luo smiled at the tomb guardian as she said softly, Thank you. After that, she stepped into the small cave. What entered her eyes wasn't any complicated array or messy mechanism. It was a vast and empty area. In the middle of it all lay an enormous coffin, which emanated a frigid aura. It was made from 10,000-year-old frigid ice. That coffin was white and transparent, like a thick layer of ice condensed into a ball. Her vision fell onto the coffin, not knowing why. Her eyes were already red. She stretched out her hand to touch her face and discovered that it was wet. Even she herself didn't know when she had tears streaming down her face. The agitation and apprehension in her heart, and the nervousness when she saw the coffin. It made her stand on the spot, unable to move, as if her feet had 1,000 pounds of weight. She wanted to go forward to take a look at her mother in the coffin, but she was so nervous that she had forgotten how to move. Originally thought that she could be very calm. But when it really came to this, all the psychological construction was just self-righteousness. The complicated feelings in her heart made it difficult for her to even breathe. This was true kinship. Blood was thicker than water. She stared blankly at the wet hands. All of a sudden, she felt a chilly sensation on her back, but it was also an extremely warm sensation that pressed close to her, like a pair of warm hands encircling her in a slightly cold embrace. My child, my Luo, a clear, choked voice rang clearly beside Yiqing Luo's ears. A drop of icy cold tear fell on her body. Yiqing Luo's petite body, almost at this moment, tensed up. That voice filled with bitterness and longing made Yiqing Luo's heart as if it was tightly gripped. Tears flowed out uncontrollably. That familiar voice. All along, when she couldn't hold on, it had been giving her encouragement, teaching her to move forward. That familiar gentleness. It was the warmth that she had once unknowingly felt. Mother, she opened her mouth, choking with sobs. It turned out that her mother had been silently guarding her all this time. In his own way, guarding her. Yiqing Luo's hand slowly used the strength on her waist to cover that pair of slightly icy cold hands. It's very soft. It's his mother's hand. Luo, that gentle voice choked with emotion. My Luo, you've suffered. Yiqing Luo clung onto her mother's hand as she slowly turned around. Behind him was a slightly transparent spirit body. She wore a blazing phoenix robe embroidered with lifelike phoenix flowers. As the skirt fluttered in the wind, numerous phoenix flowers bloomed. That face. Indeed, she was 70% similar to her. She hugged the spiritual body that seemed like it would dissipate at any moment. Mother, I've finally met you. Feng Gu, who had gentle features and tears in her eyes, hugged the person in her arms tightly. Her longing for her daughter for the past 10,000 years completely collapsed when her daughter called her mother. 10,000 years of pride and strength. At this moment, there was no way to suppress it. Feng Gu sobbed softly as she gently patted Yiqing Luo's back, her voice choked and happy. I thought, you would hate me. Feng Ji's spiritual form. Her body didn't have the warmth of a human and was slightly cold. But other than that, she was no different from a human. 17 Waist 7th Young Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Waist 7th Young Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51:51. Yiqing Luo hugged this unfamiliar, yet reassuring cold embrace tightly. Her voice was hoarse, and she suppressed her emotions, hate, back when she found out that she wasn't the daughter of the Yi family. She indeed hated Feng Gu, but this hatred was only hatred for being abandoned by her biological parents without knowing anything. There wasn't even a single reason. Hearing her daughter's reply of hate, Feng Ji's petite body trembled slightly. The next moment, Yiqing Luo's voice rang again, but later on I found out that everything Mother did was to protect me. That so-called hatred all turned into gratitude. She hugged Feng Ji's waist as her little head rubbed against her chest. I know Mother has suffered a lot for me. Even now, in order to meet me, you have sacrificed a lot. She raised her head and looked at this close proximity, familiar yet unfamiliar face, which made her feel incomparably intimate. Her voice was hoarse as she called out once again, Mother, I miss you very much. Sigh. Feng Gu replied chokingly, Mother misses you too. Mother and daughter had finally met after being separated for 10,000 years, although they were separated by yin and yang. But their longing was like water from a broken dam, gushing down unceasingly. One human and one spiritual body hugged each other tightly, conveying the longing between them. After experiencing 2 lifetimes, Yiqing Luo felt that she was so strong that nothing could make her lose control of her emotions. But now, the one who was crying in Feng Ji's arms was also her. But Yiqing Luo didn't feel embarrassed. Yiqing Luo finally calmed down. At the same time, when the two of them were expressing their longing, Yiqing Luo also roughly understood from Feng Ji's mouth the reason why she was handed over to the blood-bone barbaric king. That year, Feng Gu and Yiqing Luo's father were engaged. Feng Ji's love was vigorous and vigorous, to the extent that she totally didn't listen to anyone's advice as she loved the man wholeheartedly. After that, she gave birth to the man's child. Just like any ordinary woman's thoughts, she thought that as long as she gave birth to the child, for the sake of the child, Feng family would definitely be able to accept the man and understand her deep love for the man. But what she didn't expect was, all the changes happened right after she gave birth to the child. She had never thought, the man and her together. It wasn't because of love. It was premeditated. She noticed the strange look on the man's face. She noticed that the way the man looked at the child was not the way a father looked at his daughter, but a greedy look. There were suspicions. He would pay more attention. When the child was less than 3 months old, then she realized the man attempted to dig out his daughter's heart and take away the profound heart jade that was being nurtured there. Panicking, she stopped the man's evil deed and ran away with her daughter. Since they had shed all pretense of cordiality, the man didn't try to hide it. The two of them began to fight. Fengge was worried about her daughter in her arms. Moreover, her opponent was the man she loved deeply, so she naturally had some reservations when she attacked. However, the man's every move contained a thick, killing intent, especially the moves the man used and the profound chi fluctuations on his body. It was something she had never seen before, especially the man's body. The yin energy swirling around him didn't seem like a proper person at all. Most importantly, in front of her, the man had always been as gentle as jade. His strength was not too strong, and his talent was also ordinary. This was also one of the reasons why she thought that the Feng family was unwilling to accept men. But obviously, everything was not like what Fengge had imagined. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-52. The man's strength was on par with hers. No, or rather, the man was merciless and his methods were ruthless. Fengge, who was in a state of shock and apprehension, was no match for the man. In the end, she could only take the chance to escape with the child while he was unprepared. Following that, she issued an order as the Emperor of the Gods. Her child and the man disappeared together, and the entire god realm searched for the whereabouts of the child and the man. Following that, Fengge quietly entrusted the child to the barbaric Blood King. As a mother, she had to be strong. For the child, no matter how deeply she loved the man, she would never allow the man to hurt her daughter, especially how deep her love was, how deep her hatred was now. The man had been deceiving her from the beginning, falling in love with her and letting her give birth to the child. Everything was for the sake of the child who nurtured the divine phoenix, profound jade heart. Later on, it was the battle between the two for the child. This battle was the nightmare of the god realm, and it ended with both perishing together. Yes, perishing together. Fengge's death was to kill the man, and before she died, she used her remaining strength to send Yiqing Luo's soul to another world, the 21st century. She had arranged all the paths for Yiqing Luo. In the 21st century, in the most beautiful era where there was no war, she wanted to live well in the Yi family that she had built. But she had miscalculated one thing, and underestimated fate. Yiqing Luo listened to Fengge talking about the past, and was only a little surprised. So, the Yiqing Luo in the Nirvana realm is actually the real me. And the reason why I am in the 21st century is because Mother specially sent me over for my safety. Actually, regarding her connection with this foreign world, Yiqing Luo had already guessed it. Compared to the time she lived in the 21st century, she could feel more clearly. This foreign world was where she belonged. Mother thought, I had arranged everything to protect you for the rest of your life, but I didn't expect. I couldn't fight against fate. You still came back. Fengge gently brushed aside the stray hair on the young lady's cheek. I am happy to see you. I'm happy that you are here, but, she sighed softly, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing for you to come back here. Of course it's good. Yiqing Luo replied without hesitation. It's good to be able to reunite with Mother. Fengge smiled. Her long and narrow eyes curved, and her smile was like a blossoming rose. Yiqing Luo's arms encircled Fengge's waist as she placed her head on her shoulder, like an ordinary daughter, acting coquettishly towards her mother. The most important thing is, I've already appeared here, so there's no room for assumptions. That was right, no matter how worried Fengge was. What happened had already happened. There was no way to change it. Fengge's hand touched the girl's face. As the girl's fingertips turned cold, a thin layer of skin peeled off, revealing a face that resembled Fengge's. The rims of Fengge's eyes turned redder as she held Yiqing Luo's face in her hands. Her eyes were sparkling with tears. Mother's Luo, you've really grown up. Yiqing Luo could clearly see her own reflection in her mother's crystal-clear eyes. She suddenly pursed her pink lips tightly, grabbed Fengge's hand tightly, and looked at Fengge seriously and solemnly. Following that, she asked word by word, Mother, is there any way to let you stay? Waste 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Waste 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-53. As soon as she said that, Feng Ji's hand on the young lady's face paused slightly. That icy cold touch brushed past Yiqing Luo's face and finally drooped down powerlessly. Yiqing Luo intercepted Feng Ji's hand and held it tightly. Mother, there must be a way, right? Old Man Song could be in the form of a guardian spirit in the Azure Dew bracelet, and he could use the Azure Dew artifact to let Old Man Song turn back into a human. Then, there must be a way to let her mother survive. Silly child. Feng Gu smiled gently and raised her hand to touch her head. Mother can see you again and hug you like this. That's already very satisfying. Yiqing Luo's pink lips pursed again. She was not reconciled and wanted to say something, but Feng Gu smiled gently and shook her head at her, then stretched out both hands and held her slender shoulders. 10,000 years ago, I should have disappeared. Now that I can see you grown up and seeing how outstanding you are, I have nothing else to ask for. She paused slightly and continued in a joking tone. The only regret is, Mother has no way to personally meet that man who will accompany you for life, no way to personally hand you over to him. There must be a way. There must be. Yiqing Luo immediately held Feng Ji's hand tightly. He is outside now. If you want to see him, you will definitely see him. It's too late. Feng Gu smiled gently and raised her head. Mother doesn't have much time to be able to talk so much with you. Is already an extravagant hope. She held Yiqing Luo's hand tightly and smiled gently. Now, let Mother complete. Mother's last wish for 10,000 years. Yiqing Luo realized something. Her heart twitched violently. She said in a panic, Mother, you... Before she could finish her words, her wrist tightened. After that, she was pulled by Feng Gu and pressed next to that transparent coffin. An icy cold current seeped into her body. Feng Gu held Yiqing Luo's hand and pressed it on the coffin. Don't resist. Accept the Divine Phoenix's inheritance and inherit the position of Divine Emperor. Feng Ji's gentle voice rang in her ears. Yiqing Luo's heart was filled with panic. She struggled to get up. I don't want to accept the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix. Mother, it was so difficult for us to meet again. I don't want this. How could she not understand the meaning behind Feng Ji's words? Once she inherited the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix, Feng Gu would completely disappear from this world. Mother, don't you still want to see my him? He must be on his way to the cemetery right now. Just wait a little longer. Just wait a little longer. Yiqing Luo resisted. The bone-chilling coldness and the surging power caused her body and mind to feel extreme pain. She didn't want to see her mother, whom she had just met, disappear from her world again. As long as Xian must have a way. Xian would definitely have a way. Yiqing Luo's heart was in a mess. The feeling of losing someone important to her made it almost impossible for her to think calmly. Luo, don't be stubborn. Feng Ji's voice was still gentle, but this time it was serious. Her pair of gentle and serene, beautiful eyes met the young girl's. Mother also wants to accompany you, but you should accept this reality. The you now shouldn't be restricted to me. There are more important things waiting for you to do. Accept the Divine Phoenix's inheritance. Accept Mother's last wish. Trash 7th miss. Overlord, be gentle. Trash 7th miss. Overlord, be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-54. Then, replace Mother and become a qualified Emperor of Divine Emperors. Her beautiful eyes were filled with irresistible seriousness and graveness. Yiqing Luo was unable to reject it. She was smart. How could he not know? The so-called Divine Emperor's tomb was found 10,000 years ago. Before his mother passed away, for her, he had paved a path of retreat. She, who possessed the Divine Phoenix's profound heart jade, possessed the ability to control the vast water divine weapon. if she lived forever in the 21st life. As a result, no one had been able to use the Azure Water Divine artifact or the bloodline of the Divine Emperor's descendant to open this tomb. But if she came back to this other world, then the tomb of the Divine Emperor was her escape route. Obtaining the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix and inheriting the throne of the Divine Emperor, she would have enough power to protect herself, the people or things she wanted to protect. He also has enough power to fulfill his mother's wish. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes tightly and relaxed her body. She did not know how much time had passed. He only knew after the chilliness eroded him. Then it was like a ball of raging fire. It was as if it wanted to burn everything in the world and devour her completely. That ball of fire was like a raging sea wave, rolling and surging unceasingly. Yiqing Luo felt that she was about to be burnt into slag. In his body, the majestic and thick dark force spread to his limbs and bones. Yiqing Luo could faintly sense that those profound energy had formed into cherry blossoms within her body, just like the totem of the Azure Dew bracelet. Yiqing Luo wanted to feel it in detail. Suddenly, the surging power froze in place. Old Man Song's voice reached his ears. Not good. Someone broke in. Someone. Yiqing Luo's mind swayed and was just about to open her eyes. Feng Ji's firm voice rang in his ears again. Don't move. Concentrate. Yiqing Luo gritted her teeth, hesitating in her heart. Feng Gu emphasized, if you don't want to waste all your previous efforts, focus. If you are distracted now, the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix will fail. Do you know the consequences of failure? You only have one chance. Once he failed, that was to destroy the path her mother had paved for her over the past 10,000 years. Once he failed, the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix would forever stop with her generation. Yiqing Luo could not imagine the consequences of failure. She took a deep breath, calmed herself down, and focused her mind. Bang. At the same time, the graveyard suddenly shook. The entire graveyard shook. Two tightly entangled figures rushed into the tomb chamber at an extremely fast speed. The entire majestic graveyard seemed to be on the verge of collapse at this moment, on the verge of collapse. Boulders flew in all directions and fell to the ground. A figure shrouded in a black robe quickly followed the aura. Behind him, there was a slender figure chasing after him relentlessly. Just as the black-robed figure was about to rush into the inner circle, the tyrannical, profound strength came crashing down, blocking the path in front. The man in the bamboo robe landed lightly in front of the black-robed figure. Scram! That sinister and cold voice was filled with tyrannical, killing intent. The man's obedient and harmless face and his deep azure eyes caused people to tremble with fear. Out of the corner of his eye, he glanced in the direction of the inner circle. He did not respond to the black-robed figure's words, nor did he intend to move. Overlord, what's the use of you blocking me? That black-robed figure snorted coldly. Why not? The both of us cooperate. As long as the both of us join forces, not to mention the God realm, even if we want the entire foreign world, it will be within our reach. The black-robed voice's sinister voice revealed an inexplicable bewitchment. Trash, 7th Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash, 7th Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-55. The man looked at the black-robed figure expressionlessly as his dark red thin lips moved slightly, not interested. These three simple and calm words made the black-robed voice's viciousness intensified by several notches. Overlord, a man should fight for his great cause. Is it worth it to waste all your abilities just for a so-called love affair? How would a heartless person understand? DMO Shin's expression was icy cold as his sleeves fluttered and boundless profound rays surged. The black-robed figure cursed in a low voice. Both parties crossed hands once again. The commotion in the tomb grew louder and louder. Intense, profound rays broke through the secret chamber and shot straight into the clouds. Yiqing Luo didn't need to think to know. Now it must be. God realm, or devil region, that group of people with extraordinary abilities. They were heading towards the divine emperor's tomb. Bam! Yiqing Luo felt her body shaking violently. She heard the sound of gravel hitting the ground. Someone had already invaded the inner periphery of the tomb, invaded the place where her mother's coffin was placed. How could someone find their way here so quickly? Concentrate, Fengge bellowed in a low voice. Yiqing Luo's body kept shaking as she forced herself not to be affected by anything else, enduring the scorching flames from the divine phoenix's inheritance. DMO, Xian, stopped him in time, and the black-robed figure had yet to get close to Yiqing Luo, interrupting her from receiving the inheritance. The black-robed figure looked at the young lady who had her eyes closed and had no rejection from the divine emperor's inheritance. That sinister and treacherous face under the black robe started to twist. The black-robed figure's eyes suddenly turned cold as he stared fiercely at Lin and Mo Xian's direction. Under the black robe, that pair of icy-cold eyes seemed to be gathering a gloomy frost. Mo Xian frowned. Looking at that pair of icy-cold eyes, the corners of his eyes raised slightly. He cautiously leaned towards Yiqing Luo's direction. "Overlord, do you really think that you can stop me?" That black robe's voice was spat out coldly. He suddenly lifted the black robe and flung it upwards. The raging yin qi suddenly burst forth in the tomb chamber, which was on the verge of collapse. It brought along a strong, ferocious, majestic, and vigorous energy. The entire tomb was almost overturned. Since I dare to come, then naturally, I am fully prepared. DMO Xian had just moved. That figure who had already taken off his black robe and was dressed in a black outfit was like a poisonous snake as he blocked DMO Xian's way. Following that, the black robe that was flipped over on the ground fluttered even though there was no wind. A deep black, profound yin qi, with an icy cold, murderous intent, wrapped around Yiqing Luo. Luo. DMO Xian's pupils contracted as he hurriedly turned around and headed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. He didn't care at all. The black-robed figure was still wrapped around him. The black-robed figure smiled coldly. "Venerable sovereign, the biggest taboo in a battle is to leave one's back to the enemy. How could a dignified venerable sovereign make such a mistake?" The black-robed figure raised his palm and struck towards DMO Xian's back. In the meantime, the dense, mysterious yin qi fiercely rushed towards the young girl, like a bloody mouth baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, wanting to completely swallow the young girl. The terrifying and cold black light engulfed the young girl. The palm wind, which was filled with vigorous and boundless energy, fell towards DMO Xian's back. Yiqing Luo's entire body started to shake violently, as the power of the divine phoenix's inheritance washed through his limbs and bones. The moment the man worriedly said "Luo, Luo," Er's expression changed. The young girl opened her eyes abruptly. Between those long and narrow eyes, the fiery red glow was sparkling brilliantly. That pair of pupils were covered with a blood-red color. That ferocious, profound yin qi could not cover the young girl's red eyes. Chapter 51-56. It was the Palace of Darkness. The people from the Palace of Darkness. The Palace of Darkness actually came so fast. Yiqing Luo's blood-red eyes flashed. She couldn't let the profound yin qi touch her. She couldn't break the divine phoenix's inheritance. This was the only chance. She absolutely couldn't. Absolutely couldn't let her mother down, but that surging, profound yin qi was like an arrow leaving the bow, instantly swallowing her face. Yiqing Luo's breath froze. She couldn't evade it. Even if DMO Xian was attacked by that palm wind, he was still a step too slow. "Feng family's last. Feng family's everything. I'll leave it to you." Suddenly, a light and faintly familiar voice rang beside her ear. Yiqing Luo saw a transparent and illusory figure blocking in front of her. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly constricted. Her pink lips trembled, silently spitting out two words: "Old, old tomb." The tomb guardian's spiritual body was instantly dispersed by that profound yin-chi. In Yi Qing Luo's blood-red eyes, the only reflection was, it was the tomb guardian before he disappeared. To her, the first and also the last. Smile. And also because of the tomb guardian's obstruction. It made the profound yin-chi pause for a few breaths. And it was this moment of pause. Dmo Xian had already reached Yi Qing Luo in time. With a wave of his hand, the profound ray surged, lifting that raging profound yin-chi. Yi Qing Luo's vision fell on that man's dark red thin lips, overflowing with blood, just like the redness of her eyes. Just now, in order to rush towards her, Dmo Xian disregarded his own safety, allowing that black-robed figure to strike out a palm on his body. Ah, Xian! Her throat was slightly hoarse. She felt as if there was a fire burning her throat. That palm, the opponent didn't hold back at all. Dmo Xian also suffered that palm, forcefully, without any protective measures. He suffered all, just to rush to her side. The tomb guardian died for her. Ah Xian was injured for her. All because of her. If earlier, the tomb guardian didn't block in front of her, the current her would probably have been swallowed by the profound yin-chi. If earlier, Ah Xian didn't break the profound yin-chi in time, the current her would probably not survive. It was her incompetence that had harmed them. In Yi Qing Luo's pupils, there seemed to be raging waves surging. There was a sudden buzz in her head. The crimson light in his eyes shot out a dazzling light. A powerful rainbow light burst out from his body, and he suddenly dashed away. The cherry blossom bracelet on his wrist shot out a fiery rainbow. The burning sensation on his chest was like the power of the divine phoenix profound heart jade surging out of his body. The entire chamber suddenly exploded. The girl sitting cross-legged in front of the coffin was emitting a fiery red glow. At this moment, his aura continued to skyrocket. The tomb has exploded. Is the emperor of the divine emperors coming back to life? Quick, get closer and take a look. In the tomb of the divine emperors, there must be many divine artifacts buried with the former divine emperors. The tomb of the divine emperor has exploded. It exploded. Countless discussions resounded throughout the entire Devil Destruction Mountain. The people from the Fiend Domain, who had not dared to take even half a step into Devil Destruction Mountain, as well as the people from the outside world, were now gathered around Devil Destruction Mountain. The red glow spread across the entire Devil Destruction Mountain. The divine Phoenix legacy had ended. Yi Qing Luo slowly moved her 5 fingers. The red glow on her body slowly dissipated. Finally, it disappeared into the cherry blossom totem on the young girl's forehead. The young girl's figure floated in midair. The red glow lingered, her jet black hair flying. Her peach-red dress fluttered with the wind, making a fluttering sound. Chapter 51-57. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the young lady who was floating in midair. The sky was filled with flaming dark rays, pouring down and covering the entire sky. The entire Demon Destruction Mountain was covered in a layer of red light. It was as if flames were burning the entire Demon Destruction Mountain. That is it the Empress of the Divine Emperors? Is it? Useless Seventh Lady, Lord Dizun, please be gentle. Chapter 51-58. It is indeed you, the person behind the scenes of the Gloomy Palace 3. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 51-58. Too bad this power does not belong to you. The young lady's clear voice was filled with extreme coldness, with a hint of ridicule. Her slender fingers flicked, and the silver strands shrunk even tighter. The black-robed man's face revealed a pained expression. The young lady's pink lips rose slightly as she smiled indifferently. Do you really think that by stopping me from inheriting the God Emperor's inheritance, you will be able to get my mother's inheritance? She raised her legs slowly and stepped on the man's body. A strong and domineering aura was emitted from her body, like a king who was above the 9 heavens. and the person she was stepping on was merely an ant that could be easily pinched to death. That kind of almighty and unattainable. Too bad. The designated successor is me, and the person who is recognized by the divine phoenix's inheritance is also me. Yiqing Luo laughed softly as the profound rays were as sharp as a sharp blade, falling onto the man's body. And you have to pay the price for killing old Mu and injuring Xian. The man let out a muffled groan as he forcefully endured the overwhelming profound light. The silver strands fixed him in place, and he had no way to resist, so he could only bear it. You look so pathetic, the young lady muttered sarcastically. I'm afraid you've never been in such a pathetic state before. Palace of Darkness, the mastermind. When a young lady said the last 4 words, that black-robed man's pained expression froze slightly. He gritted his teeth and squeezed out the words, "How did you know? My identity?" This Devil Extermination Mountain is Palace of Darkness's territory in the Devil region, which means Palace of Darkness roughly knows the location of the God Emperor Sovereign. But because of the Demon Dragon King's seal, the God Emperor Sovereign's aura was concealed. The mastermind of Palace of Darkness has repeatedly found trouble with me and created so many troubles. Isn't it because they want to obtain the profound flame diagram from me and find the God Emperor's tomb to obtain the God Emperor's inheritance? So, to be able to rush to my mother's tomb in such a short time and attempt to stop me from receiving the inheritance. Other than the mastermind of Palace of Darkness, I can't think of anyone else. Listening to the young lady's patient explanation, although the man's face was filled with ruthlessness and coldness, one could see that his facial features were regular and handsome. Once again, his face twisted. Suddenly, amidst the pain, he laughed coldly. Your analysis sounds pretty good. However, you're wrong about one thing. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. I established my secret faction in Devil Destruction Mountain, not because I know the location of the Divine Emperor's tomb. Or rather, I have no clue about the Divine Emperor's tomb. He grinned coldly. Otherwise, why would I send so many people to hunt down that pair of impostors who follow the Bone Sovereign? Hearing Secluded Palace's mastermind denying it, Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. Her analysis wrong? If the other party did not know the location of the tomb of the Divine Sovereign, how could he possibly find his way here so quickly? Something was definitely wrong. He's right. He doesn't know the location of this Emperor's tomb. Suddenly, a slightly weak and extremely ethereal voice rang out leisurely in everyone's ears. When Yiqing Luo heard that voice, she immediately turned around. Amidst the raging flames, she could faintly see a figure floating towards her. On seeing that figure, Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. Mother, Chapter 51-59. She originally thought her mother had used up the last of her obsession to complete the transmission to her. After that, just like the Tomb Guardians, disappeared from the world. Because of this, before the God Emperor's power had completely merged with her body, she started to take action against the people behind the secluded palace. Old Tomb's death, Xian's injury, coupled with her mother's disappearance. All of his anger was suppressed in this instant. Now that she saw that her mother was still around, Yiqing Luo's agitation was imaginable. Fengji's movement speed wasn't fast. As he floated over neither too fast nor too slow, his voice was brimming with anger and coldness. Because when I built this tomb chamber, it was built to deal with him. She enunciated every word clearly. Fengge came to Yiqing Luo's side. That blazing red dress, under the dazzling red light, seemed illusory and dreamy, as though the next moment it would merge into the red light, disappearing. This made Yiqing Luo's heart feel unbearably tight. She clenched her slender fingers as she stretched out her hand to support Fengge. Her voice sounded a little tight, "Mother." However, Fengge avoided her touch. Indistinctly, it seemed to brush past an extremely cold chill. Yiqing Luo's hand paused. "Mother." Fengge gave her a gentle smile, Then her vision turned towards the black-robed man. That pair of beautiful eyes were filled with resentment and hatred which others couldn't understand. She congealed that familiar yet unfamiliar face as though it was a lifetime ago. No, it was indeed a lifetime ago. After all, Yin and Yang were separated by 10,000 years. She chuckled softly. That faint cold laughter had a chill which made one's scalp go numb. Huang Wuyo, you didn't expect this, right? This empress not only schemed against you 10,000 years ago, today, I still schemed against you. She said every word clearly, with emphasis on her words. The black-robed man stared at that illusory figure without blinking, as fury surged in his eyes. Hearing Feng Ji's ridicule, he gritted his teeth, but before he opened his mouth, he laughed out loudly. Schemed against this seat? Using your life to plot against me? It's a pity you calculated everything, but you didn't calculate that after 10,000 years, the daughter you've always been protecting, in other words, my own daughter, will personally undo the seal that you, the mother, personally laid down. After he finished speaking, he burst into laughter. The silver threads wrapped around his body tightened in an instant. He only let out a muffled groan and took a few heavy breaths. But as he coughed, he laughed incessantly. Shut up. Feng Ji's face darkened, and her beautiful eyes turned sharp. What do you have to say that? Luo is my daughter, my only daughter. She took a deep breath and tried her best to maintain her trembling spirit body. Huang Wuyo, don't be too happy. 10,000 years ago, I was able to seal you. 10,000 years later, my daughter, the one who will inherit the royal bloodline of the divine emperor, my daughter will definitely seal you again. Or even kill you. Feng Ge spat out the last 3 words one by one. The black-robed man, who was addressed as Huang Wuyo, heard Feng Ji's words, but there wasn't a single trace of panic on his face. Instead, his lips curled upwards, that pair of sinister eyes, which seemed to be filled with all the evil in the world, looked towards Yiqing Luo with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Following that, he laughed, but she is also my daughter. A daughter who kills her father will be punished. Chapter 5160. Are you even fit to be called father? Feng Ji's voice was trembling. Her eyes seemed to be burning with a scarlet-red glow. Huang Wuyo, you're not qualified. Not qualified to call me father. The conversation between the two fell into Yiqing Luo's ears. Like a sudden clap of thunder, Yiqing Luo's mind went into a daze. Biological daughter? F.A. father. The mastermind of the secluded palace, that man called Huang Wuyo. Was it her father? The man who had deceived her mother and schemed everything just to dig open her heart and take away the divine phoenix's profound heart jade. That man. She must have heard wrongly, right? How could this be possible? Yiqing Luo's breathing stagnated, unable to regain her senses from Huang Wuyo and Feng Ji's conversation, because she knew that she didn't hear wrongly. She also knew that they weren't joking, and she knew that there were actually many things that could be traced. That was why she was in such a daze. That was the mastermind of the secluded palace who killed people like flax, played with people's hearts, created chaos, and attempted to dominate various realms. She actually had such a relationship with him. Yiqing Luo. Huang Wuyo suddenly shouted at Yiqing Luo. That sinister face, which was covered with a haze, suddenly curled up his lips towards Yiqing Luo. No matter if admits it or not, this seat is your biological father. That is an indisputable fact. Yiqing Luo's expression turned cold as she looked at Yiqing Luo. He could use this sinister and strange emphasis to call out the 2 words that he had affectionately called her 10,000 years ago. Feng Ge was indeed so angry because of this form of address and his words. So what if I'm her biological father? Yiqing Luo's expression on her face as her voice became colder. She took a step forward, blocking in front of Feng Ge and also blocking Huang Wuyo's disgusting gaze. Other than snatching the thing that mother left me, other than playing with the hearts of my brothers, other than wanting my life, what other feelings do you have for me? She scoffed lightly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Mother is right. What right do you have to lick your face in front of me? You're my father? Her fingertips moved again. The bright silver threads shone brightly, as it entangled Huang Wuyo even tighter. The razor-sharp silver threads pierced into Huang Wuyo's flesh, all the way to his bones. That kind of extreme pain could not be described with words. Regardless of whether what you said is true or false, just based on what you've done, I won't admit it. Yiqing Luo was very calm. Her long and narrow eyes shot out a few rays of light. Even if it is for Mother's revenge, I will not let you get what you want. I will not let you have the chance to hurt me and my friends by my side. As she spoke, her tone became heavier and sharper. She tightened her fingers. The black-clothed man in the silver threads didn't even have a chance to scream. Has already dissipated in the river of silver threads vaguely. He seemed to be able to see beads of blood dripping from the silver thread. It's settled? The mastermind of the Dark Shadow Palace was taken care of. The onlookers sucked in a breath of cold air. The interpersonal relationships, nowadays, were a little complicated. The girl who walked out of the tomb of the Divine Emperor was so cold-blooded and heartless. Some people exclaimed in surprise, while others disagreed. But the crowd's thoughts didn't affect Yiqing Luo. The current Yiqing Luo was frowning tightly as she searched the surroundings vigilantly. Instinct told her things absolutely couldn't be settled so quickly. Chapter 51-61. The mastermind of the secluded palace was sinister and cunning. Since the start of Nirvana Realm, they had been fighting with her till now. How was it possible that he died so easily? Furthermore, earlier when she used the Glower Flame Fan's silver threads to chop him apart, she didn't feel the feeling of killing Huang Wuyo. Yiqing Luo's brows drooped slightly as she stared at the Glower Flame Fan on her fingertips, pondering over the peculiarity. It's no use. Feng Ji's weak voice sounded a little strained. That's not Huang Wuyo's real body. Even if he's dismembered, Huang Wuyo is still alive. Mother. Yiqing Luo kept her thoughts as she looked at Feng Gu worriedly, stretching out her hand to support her. Feng Gu avoided her hand once again as her pale lips curled upwards. That smile was gentle and filled with love towards her, but it was also mixed with helplessness. Yiqing Luo's heart tightened fiercely. Suddenly, she stretched out her hand and held Feng Ji's hand. The moment their skin touched, a wave of ice, like a 1,000-year-old frost, pierced into her body. Her entire body was frozen on the spot. That bone-piercing coldness seemed to turn her into an ice sculpture. Very quickly, Feng Gu reacted and swiftly retreated as her tone was filled with worry. Luo, are you all right? She separated from Feng Gu. The coldness that felt like it was going to pierce into his internal organs gradually subsided. But the coldness in her body was unable to dissipate. She staggered a few steps backwards. Luckily, DMO Xian supported her from behind in time. Yiqing Luo leaned against the man's arms as her pair of charming eyes stared blankly at Feng Gu, who was about to blend into the red glow. Her voice trembled slightly. Mother, what's the matter? When she asked this question, Yiqing Luo already had an answer in her heart. No wonder her mother didn't allow her to touch him. Because her mother now, maintaining her current spiritual form to converse with her, was already very taxing. There was no way to maintain her own temperature. Hugging her normally, Yiqing Luo's heart was like thousands of silver needles, pricking her needle by needle. Mother is all right. Feng Gu smiled gently and continued. Mother doesn't have much time left. Listen to me carefully. Yiqing Luo stopped the choking in her throat as she concentrated her attention on Feng Gu. Feng Gu, 10,000 years ago, I sensed Huang Wuyo's ambition. In order to protect you and send you to a brand new world without war, I exhausted my own strength to seal Huang Wuyo in the demon dragon's lair in the demon domain. I know that I don't have much time left, so when I decided to seal Huang Wuyo, I set up my grave here. It's not that Huang Wuyo knew the location of my tomb, so he established the power of the Palace of Darkness here. It's just that Mother wanted to suppress him and also to prevent him from discovering my true burial place. The most dangerous place was also the safest place. Even if Huang Wuyo racked his brains, he would not be able to figure it out. He had been searching for the whereabouts of the Divine Emperor's tomb. It was right in the place where he was sealed. Huang Wuyo's real body is still sealed under the demon dragon's lair. Earlier, Huang Wuyo was merely an incarnation of a strand of his consciousness. When Fengge said this, her eyes revealed some seriousness and solemnity as she looked at Yiqing Luo. Based on his current strength, I'm guessing his seal is going to be broken soon. Once he breaks the seal and appears, this strange world will probably fall into an abyss of suffering again. She took a deep breath as her gaze gradually turned resolute and revealed some traces of remorse. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5162. Mother knows that it's selfish of me to ask you for help now. Fengge pursed her pale lips. That weak voice was firm again, but Mother still wants. That year, it was Mother's willful act, indulging in the love created by Huang Wuyo, and made a huge mistake, and finally used my life to pay for it. Now, I hope you can complete what I failed to do that year, to stop Huang Wuyo's ambition. If it's possible, I hope you can get rid of all future troubles. When she said the last four words, her voice was choked and hoarse. Yiqing Luo's long eyelashes trembled slightly. Staring at Fengge's pale and empty face, he endured the sourness in his heart and nodded hard. Okay, Fengge's wish had been achieved. Her face revealed a relaxed and gentle smile. Her gaze was tender as she stared deeply at Yiqing Luo's face. The smile on her lips was a little bitter, but full of satisfaction. Luo, will you blame me? Yiqing Luo shook her head. No, because I didn't know the right person. You were homeless the moment you were born, without a peaceful life. Because of my obsession, I didn't care about your wishes to pave all the roads, to let you inherit the divine phoenix legacy, accept the fate of the Feng family. Now, I don't care about your wishes, making use of your feelings for me, hoping you to deal with your biological father. Fengge's eyes were filled with tears. I'm sorry. I'm not a good mother. No one wished for everything to be arranged for them to move forward, even if it was their own children. Everyone was an independent individual. Parents could give advice and help, but they must never use their own subjective views to arrange their children's future. Fengge understood this point, but she had no choice. For the common people, in order to stop the world that was about to face the abyss of suffering because of her, she had to make a choice. One, a choice that could change the current situation. So, Yiqing Luo had to bear a heavy fate. Mother, don't doubt your motherly love for me. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand, trying to hold Fengge's hand. However, Fengge took a step back. Her hand paused in midair. Then, looking at Fengge, she tightened her fingers bit by bit. He seemed to hold Fengge's hand through the air. She pursed her lips and looked at Fengge seriously. Everything you've done is not wrong. In fact, I should be thanking you for sacrificing so much for me. This has always been my fate. Even if Mother didn't want me to walk this path, he would still forcefully make a move against me, forcing me to become his tool. You're a very, very good mother. I'm proud to have a mother like you. Yiqing Luo's pink lips slowly rose into a faint arc, clear and moist like water. Luo. Fengge's eyes turned even redder as her gaze turned towards a man behind Yiqing Luo, who had been supporting Yiqing Luo's waist with one hand, standing upright. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. You? Di-Zun, she said, her voice a little heavy. Mo Xian's expression was respectful as he nodded slightly. Just call me Mo Xian, mother, when he spat out the last word in an extremely natural manner. Yiqing Luo was stunned for a moment. You're calling me mother just like that? She wasn't married yet. This man, really thick-skinned. Yiqing Luo was cursing in her heart, but her face was burning hot. Chapter 5163. Fengge was stunned for a moment before she smiled. I believe in your sincerity towards Luo. For the rest of my life, I will entrust this daughter of mine to you. Her smile seemed as though it would dissipate with the wind at any time. Yiqing Luo's heart vaguely felt something. Her fair fingers clenched Nan Rao's arm tightly as she suppressed her emotions. Dmo Xian's expression was respectful and serious as he gave a slight bow towards Feng Gu. Mother, don't worry. Love her, protect her, pamper her, love her. This is what I will use my entire life to do. This was probably the first time in Dmo Xian's life that he was so respectful towards someone. That piercingly cold aura which belonged to an overlord was completely concealed. Dmo Xian was just an ordinary son-in-law, a son-in-law who was being tested by his future mother-in-law. Feng Gu smiled satisfactorily as she nodded. This daughter of mine is much luckier than me. I believe that you will do your best to fulfill the vow you have made. Dmo Xian's gaze was resolute. Yes. Sister. Suddenly, a trembling voice was heard from not too far away. Not too far away, a figure was seen rushing over speedily. That person's robe was a mess, and his head of black hair was blown into a mess by the strong wind. He rushed over and stopped 3 steps away from Feng Gu. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Feng Gu without blinking as he panted heavily. When Feng Gu heard this voice, the smile on her face paused for a moment. Her line of sight fell onto Na Rao bit by bit. That face, which was similar to hers, was extremely agitated at this moment. Feng Gu smiled slightly. Qiong, you've grown up. She seemed to want to stretch out her hand to caress Feng Li Qiong's head. But thinking of her current physique, she quickly withdrew her hand. Feng Li Qiong's eyes widened as she stared at Feng Gu as her throat tightened uncomfortably. Feng Gu gave her an extremely gentle smile. For so many years, it's all thanks to Qiong for carrying the burden of the Feng family, and also for the sins that sister had committed. She smiled extremely gently. Luckily there's Qiong. You will always be sister's best brother. Feng Li Qiong opened her mouth and spat out a word bitterly. No, he didn't. He was not a good younger brother. Feng Ji's death was a huge blow to him, and all his thoughts were distorted. Actually, he had never blamed his sister. Never blamed her. Because of love, regardless of holding. He just wanted to find an excuse to keep himself going. Persevere. I will protect my sister, the hand that my sister wants to protect. But even so, he had done a lot of wrong things. He didn't have the qualifications to receive his sister's praise. Yes, it's all thanks to Uncle that Feng family and grandfather can survive until today. Yiqing Luo's tone was full of sincerity. Uncle, he really worships Mother. Feng Ji's smile became even more gentle, and the way she looked at Feng Li Qiong also became a little warmer. She seemed to be caressing Feng Li Qiong's head through the air. Qiong, from now on, please take care of the Feng family and Luo. You're the eldest son of the Feng family, the pillar of the Feng family. Sis, Feng Li Qiong said in a hoarse voice, her eyes welling up with tears. His heart was full of words, but at this moment, he could not say them. A hand was placed on his back. Feng family's patriarch slowly raised his head, looking at this daughter who he had always doted on, loved, but because of a moment of wrong love, had passed away 10,000 years ago. Chapter 5164. That pair of old eyes which had experienced hardships couldn't help but burst into tears. Father, when she saw Patriarch Feng, the expression on Feng Ji's face couldn't hold it in anymore. She cried softly and then knelt down on the ground. Father, I'm unfilial. Patriarch Feng shut his eyes hard. The once all-powerful old man suppressed the sourness in his eyes and made his voice calm and dignified. Everything is over. Don't mention it again. However, his trembling voice still revealed his agitation at this moment. Patriarch Feng looked at the spiritual body, which seemed like it would dissipate when the wind blew, and sighed softly. After that, he looked at Yiqing Luo. Luo has already accepted the God Emperor's inheritance. Yes, Luo is the appointed successor to the God Emperor. Feng Ji's gaze gently swept over the obvious cherry blossom totem on Yiqing Luo's forehead. That was the symbol of the God Emperor. Since Yiqing Luo was born, there was this mark on her forehead. This was the appointed future God Emperor. Luo. Patriarch Feng's voice suddenly became dignified, his tone heavy. And that call also spread to the surroundings through the profound energy. The noisy crowd quieted down at this moment. Patriarch Feng continued, "You have already received the God Emperor's inheritance from today onwards. You are the new God Emperor of the God Emperor. You have to shoulder the heavy burden of the God Realm, understand?" Yi Qing Luo knew. This was her grandfather's way of announcing her current status to everyone. The God Emperor of the God Emperor's inheritance. That was the most orthodox God Emperor of the God Emperor. All the people in the God Realm must accept the God Emperor of the God Emperor willingly. When this was said, the God Realm was in an uproar. Most of the forces in the God Realm had been dominated by the Nether Palace. Even if Feng Liqiong had eliminated many hidden forces, but there were still a lot of them left. When this was said, it immediately attracted the resistance of many God Realm cultivators. Patriarch Feng sneered and flicked his sleeves, facing the dense crowd in front. His voice was dignified and cold. "Not convinced? Then, who among you can get the God Emperor's inheritance and sit firmly on the God Emperor's position? The Emperor of the former Shenhuang has disappeared for tens of thousands of years, and your Feng family created an acting Shenhuang. To put it bluntly, you just want to occupy the position of Shenhuang and refuse to let go. What? Only the person who obtained the Divine Emperor's inheritance can inherit the Divine Emperor's throne? How do we know that she really got the Divine Emperor's inheritance?" Countless people clamored. Bang! A majestic, profound energy suddenly exploded in the middle of the crowd. The group of people who were still clamoring immediately began to scream. The illusory red spiritual body slowly floated into the air and looked down at the people below. That gentleness towards Yi Qing Luo and the Feng family members had vanished. That was the majesty that belonged to the superior, the Emperor of the Divine Emperor. The hurricane blew against her flame-like red robe. Feng Ji's brows were cold, and his words were ruthless. "What's wrong with my daughter inheriting the throne? If anyone is dissatisfied, feel free to come and find this emperor." The might of a divine emperor spread throughout the entire Devil Destruction Mountain. The pressure was so great that everyone was almost unable to breathe. Yi Qing Luo's heart felt like it was being pricked by needles, and she wanted to go forward to stop Feng Ge. Her slender waist was held tightly by Dmo Xian. He lowered his eyes, and his voice was gentle and tender. "She knows she doesn't have much time left. She only wants to use the remaining time to help you clear the obstacles. Even if you stop her now, it's useless. But if this goes on, Mother will only exhaust all her energy and completely disappear from this world." Chapter 5165. The man sighed softly and gently patted the young girl's delicate back, silently comforting her. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were red. Her slender hands clutched the man's robe tightly as she fought back her tears. She understood. She understood. Her mother was able to meet her in a spiritual form after 10,000 years was all because of her longing for her and her obsession. This was her mother's last time limit. What she hoped for was for her to sit firmly on the throne of the Divine Emperor and control the God Realm. So she used her prestige as the former Divine Emperor to oppress everyone in the God Realm. After all, she was the legitimate former Divine Emperor. Feng Ji's appearance and her anger made the cultivators in the God Realm somewhat fearful. Divine Emperor, how did you—" Some of the cultivators present naturally knew Feng Ge. When they saw that the almighty former God Monarch, who had once created countless legends in the God world, had actually come back to life in his own tomb, they couldn't help but feel shocked. However, Feng Ji's current spiritual form made everyone unable to guess what was going on. Feng Ji's brows sunk as her gaze swept across the ground indifferently. There are rumors in the outer realm that the secret of the Divine Phoenix's inheritance is hidden in the Divine Emperor's tomb, as well as the divine weapons and weapons that I used when I was alive. She raised her hand gently. Her flame-like red sleeves floated like flowing clouds. Sharp, profound light was released from Feng Ji's body. It was as if it was going to devour everything in its surroundings. All of you have tried so hard to find this Emperor's tomb. Isn't it all for those things? Feng Ge chuckled softly and her tone was cold. So, when you sensed the aura of my tomb, you were able to rush over so quickly, isn't it? Everyone was speechless for a moment. Ever since the Divine Emperor passed away, the legend of the Divine Emperor had been circulating for a long time. But these rumors only made people respectfully praise a few words when mentioning the Feng family or the acting Shenhuang. The turning point happened 16 years ago, not knowing where it came from. As long as they found the Divine Emperor's tomb and obtained the Divine Phoenix's inheritance and the divine weapon used by the Divine Emperor, he would be able to inherit the Divine Emperor's position and become the next Divine Emperor, the true Emperor of Divine Emperors. After all, no matter how high the status of Feng Liqiong and the Feng family was in the God realm, an acting Divine Emperor was, after all, an acting Divine Emperor. What they wanted more was to become the real, legitimate Divine Emperors. Maps of the Divine Emperor's tomb began to circulate throughout the otherworld. This caused countless people to have all sorts of wild and fanciful thoughts about Dai Cha. The secret at the bottom of her heart was bluntly brought out by Feng Ge, the person involved. Everyone blushed and felt somewhat embarrassed. Feng Ji's brows narrowed slightly as he shot out a sharp and dangerous glare. My daughter, Feng family's eldest sister, Feng Qingluo. She has already completely inherited God Emperor's inheritance, and has also obtained the recognition of the inheritance as the designated successor to God Emperor. Then she should be the rightful Empress of Divine Emperors. Feng Ji's words smashed down forcefully. The hearts of the crowd also felt as if they had been ruthlessly cut by a knife. At the same time, Patriarch Feng and DMO Xian exchanged glances and immediately pushed Yiqing Luo towards Feng Ji's direction lightly. The young lady stood beside Feng Ge. Two faces that were 70% similar looked at each other. Feng Ge smiled sweetly at Yiqing Luo and asked in a warm voice, "Nervous?" Chapter 5166. Feng Ji's beautiful eyes were filled with gentleness and encouragement. Yiqing Luo's curly long eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings. Their eyes met for a moment, and her pink lips curled into a faint smile. With mother around, I'm not afraid of anything. She knew clearly what her grandfather and Xian meant. Her mother was already standing in front, creating a momentum for her. She would have to depend on herself for the rest, if she wanted to help her mother to manage the God realm properly. This step was the first step that she had to take personally. The expression on her face was more calm and composed. Her long and narrow eyes were filled with laziness and casualness. His casual attitude and the smile at the corner of his lips carried a profound meaning. It made the young lady feel even more mysterious. Yiqing Luo faced the crowd. Her peach-red dress fluttered. I am Feng family's eldest sister, Feng Qingluo, and also the acknowledged successor of the God Emperor's inheritance. She raised her hand, and her slender fingers brushed past her exquisite and alluring face. The cherry blossom totem in front of his forehead shone with a dazzling light. Her fingers squatted on the totem on her forehead as she pointed lightly. No matter whether you accept it or not, my God Emperor's imprint is the best proof. I am the successor of the God Emperor, your current God Emperor. She raised her chin slightly as the devouring flame fan in her hands lightly tapped. At the same time, roar, clang, howl, hiss. A few deafening beast roars reverberated through the entire sky. The crowd had yet to regain their senses from the deafening roar, which was like a beating drum. The sky suddenly turned black. Following that, a dazzling green light covered the entire sky. Howl! The majestic dragon roar caused the entire Devil Destruction mountain to quake. The crowd raised their heads in shock. They saw a huge green dragon hovering beside them. The dragon's body was huge as it covered the sky. Pieces of dragon scales were like solid armor, sparkling brightly. Dragon, green dragon. The surrounding crowd looked in disbelief at the sudden appearance of the azure dragon. They naturally recognized it. Wasn't this one of the four sacred beasts that the former God Emperor had a contract with? The green dragon sacred beast? Remember, after the death of the former divine emperor, How many people were fighting to find the four great sacred beasts and form a contract with the one and only sacred beast in this world? However, the four sacred beasts seemed to have disappeared from the world along with the former divine emperor. As time went by, people began to forget about these four holy beasts who had once fought alongside the former divine emperor and were his greatest helpers. He only treated it as a biography within a biography. Unexpectedly, the former divine emperor had been resurrected from the grave. The azure dragon also appeared. Did the former emperor of the divine emperor summon azure dragon to cheer up his daughter? Look at the azure dragon's back. Suddenly, someone with sharp eyes saw that there was a dragon wrapped around the back of the azure dragon. The color of the dragon's scales was extremely complicated, like a leopard's pattern. At this moment, it was shaking its head and looking at them with a pair of cute, watery, and innocent dragon eyes. That was the son of the green dragon. Just as everyone was looking at the azure dragon in shock, suddenly a shrill bird cry rang out. Following that, everyone felt the surrounding air become scorching hot as if it was on fire. The sky that was enveloped by the green light was covered with a red glow. It was as if the sky was on fire. In the next instant, everyone saw that from the gap where the azure dragon was circling, a fiery red vermilion bird that was even more noble and elegant than the phoenix emerged. Chapter 51:67. The phoenix feathers that overflowed with multicolored light seemed as if they were plated with a layer of multicolored light, and they glistened brilliantly. Everywhere it went, its beautiful tail would draw a beautiful arc. It was extremely dazzling, so dazzling that everyone's eyes were almost blinded. One of the four sacred beasts, the vermilion bird. That was the vermilion bird. Everyone was excited. The appearance of an azure dragon had already shocked them. Unexpectedly, even the vermilion bird appeared. The appearance of the former divine emperor had even summoned an ancient sacred beast to cheer for his daughter. Dong! Just as everyone was staring greedily at the azure dragon and the vermilion bird, wishing they could rush forward and contract the two sacred beasts. Suddenly, a heavy object landed on the ground, smashing heavily on the ground. The entire Devil Destruction mountain quaked. Everyone felt that even the ground beneath their feet was about to split open in the next instant. That voice startled everyone, and they hurriedly looked towards the source of the voice. They saw, in a vast, empty space where the azure dragon and the vermilion bird were circling, a humongous creature slowly climbed up. It was like a towering mountain, extremely hard, and gave off a series of bone-chilling hissing sounds. That is the black tortoise? Someone recognized the humongous creature and exclaimed in shock. The black tortoise! It could be said to be the most mysterious existence among the four sacred beasts. The black tortoise was mysterious not because it could appear and disappear unpredictably. It was because the black tortoise was simply indestructible. Everyone had heard of the rumors regarding the black tortoise. The black tortoise squatted on the battlefield. Basically, there was no suspense, because no one could break the black tortoise's protection. The most important point was the black tortoise was very lazy. It was so lazy that it could not even move. It was so lazy that among the four sacred beasts, the black tortoise was the least. And now, the black tortoise was summoned just like that. The former divine emperor was determined to cheer for his daughter. With the suppression of the sacred beasts, most of the profound practitioners in the divine world would quieten down. The former divine emperor doted on his daughter too much, who was a new divine emperor who had inherited the legacy of the former divine emperor. Everyone looked at the three humongous sacred beasts and swallowed hard. The former divine emperor. Suddenly, someone in the crowd spoke. Everyone looked over. It was the patriarch of the Jiang clan of the divine world. At this moment, he was looking at Fenggo with a cold smile. The Jiang nobles were now working directly with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. There were instructions from the Abyss Palace. In addition, the relationship between the Jiang nobles and the Palace of Gloomy Shadows had been exposed. The Jiang family's patriarch naturally wouldn't allow Fenggo to set the pace and let everyone accept Yi Qing Luo's existence as the new sovereign of gods. He used his profound energy to amplify his voice to every corner of Devil Destruction Mountain. Your Feng family has been in power in the divine realm for many years. Even after the death of the former divine emperor, you didn't intend to hand over the position of divine emperor. You even let the heir of your Feng family become the acting divine emperor. What? Only those who receive the divine emperor's inheritance can become the divine emperor. Then, the acting divine emperor doesn't seem to be the one recognized by the divine emperor's inheritance, right? However, he has been in control of the god realm for such a long time. Now, another daughter of the former Shanwang emperor will become the new Shanwang emperor. Your Feng family's ambition is really big. Patriarch Zhang's words weren't very clear, but it expressed a lot of meaning. Feng family's ambition was broad, and they were bent on controlling the divine realm. Their motive was absolutely not simple. Chapter 5168. And the last sentence, withdraw the daughter of a former divine emperor. This sentence could completely trigger countless guesses from the crowd. Could it be that this former divine emperor's daughter was a fake? All of this was Feng family's scheme? Just to become the emperor of the divine emperors justifiably? If that was the case, then Feng family's table manners were too disgusting. Former divine emperor's daughter. Even if you summoned the 4 sacred beasts to support her, it's still not enough to convince us. A woman who appeared out of nowhere. What right does she have to take charge of the divine realm? After Patriarch Jiang let everyone fantasize for a while, he opened his mouth again. If I'm not wrong, this young lady doesn't seem to be from the divine realm, but someone from the lower realm. His gaze pointed directly at Feng Liqiang. It seems the acting divine emperor used his divine emperor's name to bring her to the divine realm privately, right? After Patriarch Jiang said this, not only the divine realm was in an uproar, even the people from the devil's domain were shocked. Not someone from the divine realm, but someone from the lower realm? Those lowly cultivators from the lower realm. How could they be qualified to come to the divine realm and even dream of becoming the divine emperor? If this was spread out, the divine realm would probably become a joke. Patriarch Jiang was very satisfied to see the impact of his words on the crowd. His sinister eyes narrowed slightly, his lips hooked up with a sneer, and continued to drive the crowd's emotions. Patriarch Feng, we respect your Feng family for possessing the inheritance of the divine phoenix, and have always allowed your Feng family to do whatever you want in the divine realm. Now, you actually found a young lady from the lower realm to let her inherit the divine emperor's position. Have you ever thought about whether we are willing? Patriarch Feng's face immediately darkened as he stared fiercely at Patriarch Jiang. Patriarch Feng couldn't refute Patriarch Jiang's point at all. Yiqing Luo was indeed someone from the lower realm. Before this, Yiqing Luo indeed did not have the qualifications to stand on the divine realm's territory. Whether Yiqing Luo really inherited the divine emperor's legacy or not, she was someone from the lower realm. This point, it was unacceptable. The Jiang family's aristocratic family's plan was brilliant. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes slanted as her gaze swept across the Jiang family's aristocrats. It seemed that the head of the Jiang family had also gotten some information about her from the Palace of Darkness. He was making use of the fact that she was from the lower world as a point of attack. It really was, no one could refute that. Yiqing Luo caressed the stray hairs by the side of her face as she took large strides towards the direction of the 3 sacred beasts. Her steps were light and slow, neither too fast nor too slow. As her dress fluttered in the wind, it was like a blossoming peach blossom, absolutely stunning. The nobleman of the Jiang clan snorted coldly. Big Sister Feng, you're from the lower realm. Appearing in the immortal realm is already the most lenient thing you can do. Yet, you still want to become the emperor of the divine emperors? Don't think that you can hide the fact that you are from the lower realm just by borrowing the sacred beast of the former divine emperor. Those saint beasts are not something that a person from a lower realm like you can approach. Sacred beasts were arrogant by nature. Apart from contractors, he basically didn't like anyone else. Even the contestants' relatives were the same. Some of the people present had heard that 10,000 years ago, that was when the four great sacred beasts were still around. Even if it was Patriarch Feng or Feng Liqiong, the sacred beasts might not give them a good look. This lowly person from the lower realm. How dare she get close to the four great sacred beasts? She really wanted to make use of the sacred beast to stabilize her position as the divine emperor. She must be crazy. Chapter 5169. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about him. She didn't even cast a glance at Patriarch Zhang's direction. That obvious attitude of not putting him in her eyes made Patriarch Zhang's expression sunk. He sneered as he continued to ridicule. Former Emperor of God, you'd better keep your sacred beast back. If your daughter, who came from the lower realm, you'll feel heartache. After all, the cultivators from the lower realm are lowly and lowly. If she were to be shocked by the sacred beast's might, this daughter of yours who had finally returned to your side would be gone. Patriarch Zhang's words seemed to be reminding Feng Ge. However, the sarcasm in his tone and words was extremely obvious. Feng Ge didn't bother about Patriarch Zhang's intention as her gaze followed Yiqing Luo's direction towards the sacred beast. Her gaze followed closely without blinking, as though she was worried about Yiqing Luo. When Patriarch Zhang saw that, he assumed that Feng Ge had listened to his words as he smiled even more complacently. Former Emperor of God, now isn't the time to show off. You'd better summon the sacred beast back. Who told you that the sacred beast is this Empress's battle pet? Feng Ge seemed to be annoyed by the commotion as her exquisite, beautiful eyes creased slightly as she shot an impatient glance at Patriarch Zhang. Patriarch Zhang went into a blank as he didn't quite understand the meaning of Feng Ji's words. Feng Ji's red lips curved as she gave a sarcastic and proud smile. Patriarch Zhang, this empress has already passed away 10,000 years ago, and before that, this empress had already terminated the contract with the four sacred beasts. The meaning of her words. She and the sacred beasts had nothing to do with each other. Those sacred beasts' arrival wasn't summoned by her. It had nothing to do with Feng Ge. Where did those sacred beasts come from? Patriarch Zhang was stunned for a moment, as he quickly regained his senses as he looked towards the direction where the sacred beasts were heading. Suddenly, a gloomy ridicule flashed past his eyes as he suddenly opened his mouth. Former Emperor of God, since the four sacred beasts had already terminated the contract with you, then, you still allow Sister Feng to get close to the sacred beasts? Sacred beast temperament is unpredictable, and Sister Feng is already in danger when she gets close to them. Not to mention that these sacred beasts have nothing to do with former Emperor of God. I'm afraid Sister Feng doesn't even know about this. Is this the so-called lifting a rock only to smash one's own foot? Initially, I wanted to make use of the holy beast's might to build momentum, but now I even have to pay with my life. Ha ha ha. Zhang Clanhead's tone was full of sarcasm. At this moment, Yiqing Luo was getting closer and closer to the three sacred beasts. It was so close that as long as the three holy beasts raised their heads slightly and breathed out, he could probably throw her to the ground. Yiqing Luo had no way to advance, no way to retreat. Only death awaited her. Clan Lord Jiang was filled with such thoughts. Suddenly, a tyrannical and ferocious beast roar shook the entire Devil Destruction Mountain. It was the roar of a beast. It caused one's eardrums to expand and one's chest to tremble. Pa! Everyone saw a snow-white huge tiger lying horizontally in front of Yiqing Luo. That white tiger was huge. Yiqing Luo stood in front of the white tiger. It was only as tall as the white tiger's claws. The white tiger, sacred beast of the four great sacred beasts. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. The four sacred beasts were all gathered here. They could actually see the four great sacred beasts alive. This was practically a lifetime series. Oh, everyone went crazy as they kept on exclaiming and exclaiming in admiration. All of them stared greedily at the four great sacred beasts. They couldn't wait to contract these four sacred beasts and become their own battle pets. Chapter 5170. They had clearly heard Patriarch Zhang's words just now. 10,000 years ago, these four unique sacred beasts had already terminated the contract with the former Emperor God. This also meant that everyone present had the opportunity to form a contract with the four great sacred beasts. They didn't request to be like the former Emperor God, to contract all four sacred beasts. They only wanted one. As long as it was just one, he would be willing. The crowd's attention was all on the four sacred beasts. And those forces led by the Jiang family's aristocrats were also looking at the sacred beasts excitedly. But the reason why they were excited wasn't because they could contract the four sacred beasts, but because Yiqing Luo couldn't live on any longer. Patriarch Jiang couldn't help but burst out laughing. Laughing at Yiqing Luo's stupidity. Yiqing Luo's stupidity. That elder sister Feng was extremely stupid. In order to borrow the sacred beast's might to build momentum, she took the initiative to get close to the sacred beasts. Now, the white tiger's sacred beast had appeared. That elder sister Feng had been completely surrounded by the four sacred beasts. Based on the four sacred beasts' unyielding character, Feng Qing Luo couldn't escape death. Patriarch Jiang was filled with this thought as he scrutinized, and even the ridiculing words had flashed past his mind. But let Patriarch Jiang know, it was a scene which made everyone shocked and dumbstruck. It appeared. That huge white tiger's sacred beast, which was lying horizontally in front of Yiqing Luo, didn't raise its tiger claws to slash Yiqing Luo into two halves like what everyone had guessed. Instead, it slowly lowered its sacred beast's prestige towards Yiqing Luo's direction. It automatically sent its furry head into Yiqing Luo's hand. That intimate gesture, anyone could see that. This wasn't the end. The more exciting scene was still ongoing. That azure dragon's sacred beast, which was hovering in the sky, slowly lowered its body. The vermilion bird's sacred beast, which was flying around arrogantly in the sky, flaunted its beautiful phoenix feathers as it flew towards Yiqing Luo. Even that black tortoise sacred beast, which was too lazy to move, also rolled its hard outer shell as it got closer to Yiqing Luo. Then, for completely different but equally dignified voices rang out, "Master." They called out in unison, shaking everyone's heart. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Following that, he gasped in disbelief. Wait a minute, were they seeing things? Then the legendary and invincible four great sacred beasts had actually called him master? Where was his dignity and pride as a sacred beast? No, that's not right. That's not the point. The main point was the direction that the four sacred beasts were facing was Feng family's eldest sister, that Feng Qing Luo, who was rumored to have inherited God Emperor's inheritance. The four sacred beasts actually let her form a contract with them. As soon as this news came out, everyone was boiling with excitement. How could he believe it? Everyone was so greedy that the four great saint beasts, which would be a cause for celebration, actually submitted to a girl. Back then, even Feng Ge might not have been able to be addressed as master. They could not understand why the four great sacred beasts would form a contract with a girl. No one would doubt the authenticity of the contract between Yiqing Luo and the sacred beast. Because of the pride of a holy beast, it was impossible for him to cooperate with Yiqing Luo's act just because of Feng Ji's instruction. Therefore, that lowly young lady who came from a low-level plane, she had really formed a contract with four great saint beasts. Chapter 51-71. Those four sacred beasts surrounded the young lady with an intimate and harmonious look. It was like a heavy slap on Jiang family's patriarch's face. This was a complete slap on his face. Perhaps no one in the crowd had expected this. The rumored four great sacred beasts were contracted by a young lady from the lower realm, facing everyone's shocked and complicated gazes. Yiqing Luo totally didn't pay any attention to it. Her vision was fixed on these few companions in front of her. Her long and narrow eyes were slightly curved as it gave a gentle arc. She stretched out her hand and touched the four companions as the smile on her pink lips deepened. You're finally out. Ever since they came to the Devil region, she couldn't sense the presence of the pet space. to these few adorable beasts. She missed them very much. Chi-Chi's huge head rubbed against Yi Qing Luo. One head had already covered the young lady. The huge creature's voice was very soft. Master, Master, Chi-Chi missed you so much, you stinky tiger. Hurry up and get out of the way. Let me see if Master has become ugly again. This arrogant voice was obviously Qi Yin. Is Master all right? This gentle young man's voice was obviously black tortoise Xian Gui. I didn't expect, you lass, to inherit the God Emperor's power. This steady voice was obviously Azure Dragon. The Azure Dragon's whiskers fluttered as it lamented. We were suddenly sealed in the pet dimension. We couldn't leave, and we couldn't get in touch with you. Just now, a sudden surge of energy broke the barrier between us, and we were able to come out of the pet dimension. Azure Dragon's huge eyes had already seen the surrounding environment and immediately understood what had happened. And it was precisely because of this. Earlier, after they appeared, it was to create momentum for their own master. The sacred beast's might was majestic and sharp, as well as a huge pressure oppressing the crowd's nerves. Yi Qing Luo flipped over and leapt onto Chi-Chi's back. On the huge white tiger, there was a scorching flame which was extremely obvious. After that, Chi-Chi started to move and walked back towards the direction where Feng family's patriarch and the rest were. As for the other three sacred beasts, they were like the most loyal guardians, firmly following behind Chi-Chi, who was also Yi Qing Luo's back. That imposing manner was like a rainbow, that mighty and domineering. This scene was reflected in everyone's eyes. He would probably not be able to forget this scene for the next few decades. All the way back to Feng Clanmaster's side. The originally magnificent cemetery that had now collapsed into ruins was the center of it all. It was as if he was covered in frost, and the cold intent spread out in all directions. Yi Qing Luo sat leisurely on the back of the white tiger. Her eyes were calm, but there was a sense of foreboding chill. The appearance of the four great saint beasts. It was exactly what she needed right now. She must do it before her mother loses all of her strength. Fulfill Nyangqing's expectations. The imposing manner between Yi Qing Luo's brows grew stronger and stronger. A voice as cold as ice rang out from all directions. If I'm not qualified to inherit the throne of the Divine Emperor, then who is? The girl's long and narrow eyes were filled with a mocking smile. Even though they were far away, she could still accurately fix her gaze on the Jiang clan's patriarch. She sneered, you, without waiting for Patriarch Jiang to respond. Yi Qing Luo indifferently sneered and ridiculed. But on what basis? You and my Feng family have been in charge of the God Realm for so many years. That's because we have this qualification. And the reason why I can inherit the throne of the Divine Emperor is because of the Feng family's blood flowing in my body, so I can obtain the recognition of the Divine Emperor's inheritance. Chapter 5172. When Yi Qing Luo reached this point, she paused slightly. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, adding a sense of mockery and mockery. She tilted her head and fixed her teasing eyes on Patriarch Jiang. She said sarcastically, if Patriarch Jiang really wanted to be a divine emperor, why didn't you try to get the inheritance of a divine emperor after so many years? Jiang family master's face was livid with anger. Isn't this because of your Feng family's selfishness? He hid the inheritance of the divine emperor in the tomb of the former divine emperor. How can we get the inheritance of the divine emperor? Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue, spread out her hands, and sighed helplessly. So, it's because you don't have the ability. You, the head of the Jiang clan, was exasperated. Yi Qing Luo interrupted again. The divine emperor's inheritance is controlled by our Feng family. This is our strength, our qualification, and you, Jiang family, and even other aristocrats, can't get the qualification of the divine emperor's inheritance, nor can you find the whereabouts of the divine emperor's inheritance. That is your incompetence. All of you are weak and incompetent. Why should I be the scapegoat? Yi Qing Luo's sentence after sentence was totally stabbing a knife into Patriarch Jiang's heart. Following that, Yi Qing Luo slowly stood up on Chi-Chi's back. The young girl in a pink dress on the back of the huge white tiger was very eye-catching. The aura that the young girl released bit by bit overlapped with the might of the holy beast. The atmosphere of the entire Devil Destruction Mountain had sunk into a strange and stagnant atmosphere that made it difficult for people to breathe. I found the Divine Emperor's tomb, obtained the Divine Emperor's inheritance, and inherited the Divine Emperor's inheritance. The girl enunciated each word clearly. This is my qualification. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed slightly. A sharp cold light swept across everyone. Do you still have any objections? These simple words came out of his mouth. The girl's tone was also extremely casual. However, it caused everyone to feel an indescribable fear in their hearts. Especially, just a few breaths after the young girl finished speaking, the four saint beasts began to move. He growled at them in warning. The warning was too obvious. The Devil Destruction Mountain quietened down. How could anyone dare to object? There was no way he could refute Yiqing Luo's words. It doesn't matter what you think, and it doesn't matter whether you are willing or not. My Feng family will be a phoenix for 10,000 years. From today onwards, I, Feng family's descendant Feng Qing Luo. It's the new divine phoenix of the God realm. The girl's words were unquestionable. It was very intimidating. The people from a divine world simply had no room to refute. After intimidating that group of people, Yiqing Luo had no intention to waste any more time. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed the onlookers. The people surrounding them naturally refused to leave. Even if he could not obtain the inheritance of the Divine Emperor, even if he could not contract a sacred beast, at the very least, I can enter the tomb of the Divine Emperor and get some divine artifacts, right? It should be noted that this was a divine artifact that had been placed in the tomb of the Divine Emperor for tens of thousands of years. Any one of them could set off a gust of wind. However, the four sacred beasts unleashed their might at the same time, all kinds of crazily chasing people away. In the end, it was completely dispersed. Devil Destruction Mountain quietened down. Yiqing Luo looked at the tomb, which had already turned into ruins, and finally her gaze fell onto the increasingly transparent and weak Fengge. Her throat tightened as she called out hoarsely, "Mother!" Fengge gave a gentle smile as her eyes were filled with joy and encouragement towards Yiqing Luo. You've done very well to entrust the God realm and the Feng family to you. I'm very assured. New Divine Phoenix, you'll always be the best existence in Mother's heart. Chapter 5173. Yiqing Luo's eyes were red, and her breathing was getting heavier, as though something was blocking her heart. Fengge shook her head gently. Don't cry. To be able to see you again, I'm already very content. After that, her gaze went past Yiqing Luo and looked towards a certain direction behind her. Her smile was even gentler, with a tinge of joy. You're here. Yiqing Luo was stunned as a figure flashed past her mind. She turned her head and indeed saw Bloodbone Barbaric King. Why was Uncle Bone here at Devil Destruction Mountain? Wasn't he escorting those two people who had disguised themselves as her and DMO Xian? Bloodbone Barbaric King's gaze was fixed on Fengge without blinking. The emotions in his eyes were extremely complicated, making one unable to tell what he was thinking, until Bloodbone Barbaric King stopped in front of Fengge. One person and one spirit for eyes met. Fengge's brows softened as her lips curled into a sweet smile. Agu, it's been hard on you for so long. Bloodbone Barbaric King didn't say a word as his fingers clenched tightly. His entire body tensed up. Fengge seemed to have guessed Bloodbone Barbaric King's reaction as she smiled gently. If it wasn't for you, I really don't know what to do. Her eyes drooped, and the gentleness in her brows made her exquisite and stunning face look extremely gentle. To be able to see you again, I'm very happy. Bloodbone Barbaric King looked at her without blinking. Their eyes were filled with surging waves that were crazily surging. The lady's sweet smile was reflected in Bloodbone Barbaric King's pupils. After some time, Bloodbone Barbaric King then spoke in a hoarse voice, regret. These three words seemed to have used up all his strength. Gu raised her eyes. Her brows were gentle as she gazed at Bloodbone Barbaric King's handsome face, smiling with some joy and relief. She nodded her head very lightly and said clearly, "Regret." Bloodbone Barbaric King's pupils shrank abruptly. Feng Ji's smile became even more gentle as she stretched out that slightly transparent hand, stretching out towards Bloodbone Barbaric King across the void. Following that, it tightened bit by bit. It was as if he wanted to hold the barbaric Bloodbone King's hand. After Feng Gu finished this action, she chuckled. "If the person I chose was you, how good would that be?" Her words were soft. However, his words were clearly heard by the barbaric Bloodbone King. The barbaric Bloodbone King's heart skipped a beat. His heart skipped a few beats. This was his first time. Hearing Feng Ji's positive answer, their feelings for each other deepened. 10,000 years of waiting can say this sentence. He was already satisfied. The barbaric Bloodbone King slowly stretched out his hand, wanting to hold Feng Ji's hand. But Feng Gu had already withdrawn his hand. She gave him an extremely beautiful smile. After that, she looked at Yi Qing Luo again. "Luo, you're luckier than me and smarter than me. Mother knows that he will take good care of you." Her voice grew weaker and weaker. His gaze then looked towards DMO Xian, "My daughter in the Feng family. I'll leave it to you." "Mother." Yi Qing Luo's heart tightened as she realized something. DMO Xian's gaze was firm, neither servile nor overbearing. "Yes, I will." Feng Gu exchanged a few more words with Patriarch Feng and Feng Liqiang. Finally, his sight fell onto the barbaric Bloodbone King. The barbaric Bloodbone King's hand had been stretched toward her. His hand was trembling visibly. His thin lips trembled as he said word by word, "I will protect the people you care about and the family." Feng Gu suddenly burst into laughter. Chapter 5174. That light laughter rippled in the wind, and it even had an echo. In the laughter, there was some relief and lightness. "You have always understood me, able to guess all the thoughts in my heart." Feng Gu raised her hand and slowly pressed it on her chest. The smile on her brows became gentler. "I am sincere." Perhaps she was indeed very selfish. In the eyes of the Bloodbone Savage King, at this critical juncture, she gave him a response. A memory which was enough to make him laugh secretly for the rest of his life. It was hope. He was able to protect Yi Qing Luo and take care of the Feng family. But when she said those words, it was not because of this motive. She was sincere. Sincere regret. Sincerely felt that if the person she had fallen in love with was Gu, all these would not have happened. She would come out. Only hope. She and Gu's relationship did not have any more regrets. Gu had been waiting for her from 10,000 years ago, 10,000 years later. His heart had never changed, and absolutely would not be moved by any other woman. So, she was willing to selfishly say these words which would bring endless shock to Gu, and perhaps it might cause Gu to not see any other woman in the future, came out. Gu, the Bloodbone Savage King's pupils constricted suddenly. He looked at Feng Gu in disbelief, watching her actions. Ecstasy gushed up his heart. He suddenly pounced towards Feng Gu, trying to hold her hand. "Is what you said true? You really?" But before his hand touched Feng Gu, that sweet and gentle smile, with a satisfied smile on her face, bit by bit dissipated in the air. Not a single remnant shadow could be seen. The wind brought the gentle and loving voice of the woman, word by word, was clearly enunciated into everyone's ears. "I will use another way, to accompany by your side. I will always be here." The Bloodbone Savage King's ecstasy fell heavily at this moment. He stretched out his hand again, grabbing the air. "Gua? Gua?" But there was no response from that gentle voice. Feng Gu had completely disappeared. Her obsession had been exhausted. The Bloodbone Savage King knelt heavily on the rein. His eyes were lifeless as he supported himself on the ground. His face was filled with disappointment and shock. "Mother!" Yi Qing Luo clenched her fists and buried her head in DMO Xian's arms. Lin Mo Xian's clothes were soaked in tears. DMO Xian gently patted her back, silently comforting her. Feng Clan Master slowly turned his back and tears flowed down his face. As for Feng Liqiang, she was bawling like a child. The group of people calmed down. No one mentioned anything about Feng Gu anymore. Yiqing Luo had no intention to leave Devil Extermination Mountain. After she led everyone down the mountain, she asked the demonic hall to send people to set up a few tents at the foot of the mountain as a place to rest. The demonic hall did not agree at first. She didn't expect the seemingly powerless Mu Yu, who only knew a little about medicine, was actually the daughter of the previous divine emperor, the current divine phoenix. And that seemingly harmless and well-behaved man with azure eyes was the real Overlord. Wasn't he just messing with her? It was no wonder that at the wedding in Devil Head City, they could make the nine-tailed fox, the venerable sovereign's great mercy, holy beast, so obedient. But if she rejected, when the Overlord's icy cold gaze swept past them, they were all stuck in their throats. The demonic hall sent people over to set up the tents. She stood in front of Yiqing Luo. Her cold and elegant face was obviously unhappy. The new divine phoenix wouldn't have forgotten what she had promised me, right? Chapter 5175. Yiqing Luo raised her gaze slightly. She, who had already inherited the divine emperor's legacy, exuded an oppressive aura that no one could look at directly. She gathered her sleeves and looked at the cold face of the Devil Hall. She raised her eyes and said lightly, "Of course I won't forget." Devil Palace stared at Yiqing Luo and sized her up for a while as her beautiful eyes slowly narrowed. "Why did you disguise yourself as another identity to come to the Devil region?" She still couldn't figure it out. As the eldest sister of the Feng family in the God Realm, why did she need to hide her identity? He then thought about what she had done in the demonic domain. The Demon Hall had no choice but to think further. If this Fengqing Luo was sent by the God Realm to invade the Devil Domain, then if she cooperated with Fengqing Luo, wouldn't she be helping Fengqing Luo completely? The Demon Hall was filled with doubts. But the biggest reason was, in fact, she knew it herself. It came from new roused jealousy, especially when she had almost married the Overlord in front of Fengqing Luo. Even if that Dizun was a fake, standing in front of the future mistress of the Imperial Palace whom the Overlord had acknowledged, Fengqing Luo, she always had a kind of the embarrassment of being so lowly to the point of dust. Yiqing Luo gently caressed Chi-Chi, who had turned into a cat in her arms as her gaze was calm. "You don't have to worry. I'm not interested in the Devil region." She was very straightforward and had no intention of beating around the bush. "I came to the Demon Domain purely to see my mother. You should also understand that the gloomy palace is eyeing my mother's tomb covetously. They want to get the location of the godly emperor's tomb from me. If I don't change my appearance, do you think I can inherit the throne so smoothly?" Yiqing Luo's counter-question made the Devil Palace speechless. The Demon Hall and Gloomy Palace were working together. Naturally, he understood the style of the Abyss Palace, with the way Shady Palace did things behind the scenes. She would definitely snatch the opportunity before Fengqing Luo to barge into the God Emperor's tomb, turning the God Emperor's tomb upside down. The Demon Hall was silent for a moment. "How do you plan to deal with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness now?" Yiqing Luo had no intention to hide it. The seal behind the secluded palace is at Devil Extermination Mountain. As for the exact location, after I find out, I will personally settle this 10,000-year-old grudge. There was no need for her to hide anything. Everything the Devil Hall did was for the sake of the Devil region, for their own ambitions. Right now, on one side was the Dark Palace, which had already been defeated once and was obviously up to no good. The ambition and pride of the Demon Hall would never allow itself to be used by others. On the other hand, it was the new Divine Phoenix who had already inherited the Divine Emperor's inheritance. It represented the entire God Realm. There was no need for the Demon Hall to worry that she would take this opportunity to attack the Demon Domain. After all, she had just taken office, and she needed her face. "I can't do such a shameless thing to ruin the reputation of the Feng family." The cold and beautiful eyes of the Demon Queen flickered with a faint light. After a while, She opened her mouth and said coldly, "Then I will wait quietly for the new divine phoenix's good news. I hope that you will remember our agreement." After that, the Devil Hall didn't say anything else. He turned around and left. Yiqing Luo looked at the departing silhouette of the Devil Hall as her pink lips curled into an undetectable arc. This Devil Hall most probably wasn't as clean as it appeared on the surface. However, as long as it was at this critical juncture, if she didn't stir up any trouble. During this period of time in the Devil region, Yiqing Luo still wanted to maintain a superficial relationship. Chapter 5176. At least it was more convenient for many things. Yiqing Luo retracted her gaze and looked at the surrounding people who were still setting up their tents. She then walked toward the other corner of Devil Destruction Mountain, a more secluded place. But it wasn't too far away from the tents. She intended to stay in Devil Destruction Mountain, to wait for the person behind the scenes of the Palace of Darkness, Huang Wuyo's seal. If she could reseal Huang Wuyo before his seal was lifted, or take the opportunity to eliminate him, then everyone would be happy. But before this, Yiqing Luo had persuaded Patriarch Feng to return. After all, there was still Feng Shi's friend in the Feng family. If the Palace of Darkness took the opportunity to play some despicable tricks, her weakness would be pinched. Patriarch Feng thought of Feng Shi and the hostage of the Palace of Darkness, Princess Ling Long. He endured the pain of losing Feng Gu and his worry for Yiqing Luo as he left the Devil region. But Feng Liqiong refused to leave no matter what. He knew what Feng Ji's wish was, so he wanted to stay and help Yiqing Luo to fulfill Feng Ji's wish. Yiqing Luo knew that Feng Liqiong was repenting, feeling ashamed that her obsession with Feng Gu had distorted her thinking and caused her to do so many wrong things. Yiqing Luo didn't stop her, but because Feng Gu had completely disappeared from this world, Feng Liqiong couldn't control her emotions at all, so she went off alone to ease her grief. So did Barbaric Blood King. As for Dmo Xian, he summoned the disciples of Dragonscale Palace and started a search around Devil Destruction Mountain for the real place where Huang Wuyo was sealed, which meant, now, other than the guards who were setting up the tents, there was only Yiqing Luo alone. When Yiqing Luo walked to a secluded corner, she flipped over and climbed up a big tree. Her back leaned against the tree trunk as she bent one knee and placed one hand on it. His other leg was dangling leisurely, swinging back and forth. Her slender fingers lightly tapped on the tree trunk twice as she spoke in a casual tone. "How long do you intend to follow me secretly? Haven't you enjoyed the show?" The young lady's voice was slightly hoarse, but it was full of majesty. A figure suddenly appeared. With a lightning speed, it appeared in front of Yiqing Luo in a blink of an eye. The thick and solid tree trunk carried the weight of two people, and because of this sudden weight, it kept swaying. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased as her voice became heavier. "Men and women should not touch each other. Step down." That figure was still crouching in front of her. A pair of eyes that seemed to be filled with bloodlust and slaughter, at this moment, had an inexplicable and cold smile that was filled with killing intent. He stared at her without blinking. Yiqing Luo's hair stood on end from his stare as she raised her hand and gave a tight slap to the face in front of her, before he could slap the other party's face. Her wrist was held by someone. The icy cold touch made Yiqing Luo couldn't help but shiver. "Damn girl, you dare to play tricks on me." The man's voice was low and cold, and it sounded like he was gnashing his teeth. Yiqing Luo struggled against his hand. "I can't stand the yin-shi on your body. Let go and get down." The man frowned and tightened his grip on the girl's wrist. That icy, cold, bloodthirsty gaze was fixated on Yiqing Luo for several breaths. Suddenly, his sleeves fluttered as he landed under the tree. Yiqing Luo turned her head and looked at him from this angle. "Lord Demon Dragon, the deal between us has already ended. Why are you still looking for me?" "Yes." The black-robed man in front of him was like an Azura from hell. He was the Demon Dragon King, Long Ao. Chapter 5177. Long Ao's entire body was gloomy, and his entire body was filled with bloody, killing intent. It did look quite scary. Yiqing Luo totally didn't dare to guess what he had done to harm Li before he was sealed, which made him look so gloomy. Obviously, he was just a hot-tempered fool who would resort to violence at the slightest disagreement. However, he had forcefully turned into a tyrant. Back in the tomb of the Divine Emperor, she made a deal with Long Ao. She lifted the seal on Long Ao, and Long Ao took her to the real tomb of the Divine Emperor. At that time, she hadn't truly unlocked Long Ao's seal. However, he still secretly made some movements that Long Ao wasn't aware of. About 4 hours later, Long Ao's seal would naturally be lifted. And now, it was time for Long Ao's seal to be lifted. Yiqing Luo had guessed that Long Ao would come to settle the score with her, but she had not expected that. It would be so fast. Why did I look for you? You still have the guts to ask. Long Ao's tone was icy cold, as if a bone-piercing chill pierced into Yiqing Luo's skin. Yiqing Luo's expression remained unchanged as she continued to tilt her head and smiled sweetly. How would I know if you're not here? Long Ao's entire body's yin qi wreaked havoc as it entangled towards Yiqing Luo. All right, remove the seal for this seat. How dare you abandon this seat? Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she replied seriously. Aren't you already out now? Long Giao was coming out now the main point. Most importantly, she had lied to him before this. Long Ao expressed that he was completely unable to accept it. He had lived for tens of thousands of years, but he was actually being played by a girl like this. I've already stayed here for more than 10,000 years. Do you really need another 4 hours? Yiqing Luo's slender fingers touched her chin. Anyway, the ending is that you've already unlocked the seal and regained your freedom. That's enough, isn't it? Long Giao. He actually felt that it made sense. Long Ao retracted his yin qi and jumped onto a tree beside Yiqing Luo. Now that you've regained your freedom, why did you come looking for me? Yiqing Luo turned her head over to look at him. You've already unlocked the seal, so my vast aqua god relic to you isn't of much use. Long Ao had a gloomy expression on his face. He then said in a deadly earnest manner, This lord has been sealed by that woman Feng Ge for so long. So, I have long been disconnected from this world. I only know you, so of course I have to follow you. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. I don't seem to be very familiar with you. She paused and reminded him. Before this, you wanted to take my life. Long Ao waved his hand. Aren't you still alive? Do you need to harp on this trivial matter over and over again? Therefore, was it his fault that she didn't die? Because of him? Yiqing Luo was so angry that she laughed. She was not interested in having this unpredictable time bomb by her side. What if it blew up for no reason? Wouldn't she vomit to death? He probably saw through Yiqing Luo's rejection. Long Ao leaned against the tree with the attitude of a big boss. His tone was sinister and carried a tinge of complacency. Listen, you're looking for the monster that was sealed by that woman in the Devil Destruction Mountain. Yiqing Luo originally didn't intend to bother about him, but after hearing this sentence, her expression changed slightly as her gaze congealed. You know about it? The monster in Long Ao's words was probably referring to Huang Wuyo. In the eyes of the Devil Dragon King, like Long Ao, Huang Wuyo had become a monster. That Huang Wuyo, what was his identity? Chapter 5178. Of course this seat knows. Long Ao gave a sinister smile. In this world, there's nothing that this seat doesn't know. Yiqing Luo retorted coldly. Then why don't you know that you'll be sealed by my mother? Long Ao. The rampaging yin qi surged once again. Long Ao looked rather flustered and exasperated. All right, if you don't want to know where that monster is sealed, then forget it. This seat will go myself. Yiqing Luo. He was still acting like it's Sundara. This Long Ao, why did his name and his aura totally not match? Where's the cool and aloof Azura from hell who was filled with killing intent? She felt. Her Uncle Bone was probably more worthy of the name Long Ao. Yi Qing Luo straightened her body as she turned sideways to look at him. Will you be so kind? This Long Ao wasn't evil, but he was absolutely not a righteous person. Everything depended on his mood. Yi Qing Luo didn't feel that Long Ao was purely out of touch with the world and wanted to pester her. Perhaps this Long Ao was harboring the thought of taking revenge on Fengge. Perhaps when he brought her to the place where Huang Wuyo was sealed, then in front of her he would release Huang Wuyo's seal. Yi Qing Luo believed Long Ao, this bastard, would never do such a stupid thing. Yi Qing Luo didn't conceal his suspicions, so infuriated that Long Ao's sinister aura started to sweep around. He flicked his black robe as he leapt down from the tree. Believe it or not, it's up to you. The wide black robe was like a black fog as it rolled down, forming a cold arc in the air. In a blink of an eye, he disappeared in front of Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's face didn't reveal much emotions. She curled her lips very lightly as her legs dangled in midair. With a delicate young lady's look, she sighed softly. Tisk, I just wanted to agree to him, and he left. Forget it, forget it. Swoosh. In the air, there was the sound of clothes brushing past. Immediately following that, the tree, which Yi Qing Luo was on, shook violently. The man dressed in black robe, who was filled with an austere aura, appeared once again in front of Yi Qing Luo. He squatted on the tree trunk and pressed his hands beside his feet like a dog sitting. That pair of dark and sinister eyes stared at Yi Qing Luo, his face filled with an awkward and gloomy expression. This seat will give you one more chance. Do you want to find that monster's territory or not? This time round, Yi Qing Luo didn't tease Long Ao anymore. This Long Ao's brain doesn't seem to be working very well at present. Moreover, he looks like a bloody murderer, but he looks like a clown. But no matter how amusing a person was, there was still a bottom line. Long Ao had already bowed his head once. If she didn't let go, she was afraid that Long Ao wouldn't care about her anymore. Now, only Long Ao could find the place where Huang Wuyo was sealed. Let's go. What are you waiting for? Long Ao saw that the girl was still sitting in the same place. He couldn't help but urge her. Yi Qing Luo replied, Wait for my uncle and Uncle Gu to come back. Then we'll... Finding a territory is so troublesome. To think that you're that girl Rao's daughter. So timid and useless. Long Ao didn't wait for Yi Qing Luo to finish her sentence, as he gave a look of disdain. He glanced sideways at Yi Qing Luo. Why? Are you afraid that this seat has no way to protect you? Yi Qing Luo. She totally didn't expect him to protect her. If he could stop scheming against her in the dark, she would be thankful. All right. Chapter 51:79. Furthermore, his tone was filled with disdain. What was he trying to do? This was called vigilance. This was called using one's brain. But Long Ao had an impatient look, with a go if you want. I can't be bothered to wait on you expression. Yi Qing Luo muttered to herself for some time before summoning Azure Dragon's son, Shiju. Yi Qing Luo stroked Shiju's head, making it wait for Bloodbone Barbaric King and Feng Liqiang's arrival. Then she told them about this matter. Shiju seemed to have successfully evolved into a leopard dragon. Leopard dragon was actually a collective term. Currently, Shiju's original body was a huge dragon, but the dragon scales on its body were like leopard prints. Especially since Shiju not only possessed the dragon skills, it also possessed the leopard skills. It was simply an invincible combination. Most importantly, Shiju could smoothly interact with other humans now. This was the most important reason why Yi Qing Luo kept it. The other reason was for safety. Although Shiju had advanced, it was still a dragon. But a young child was after all a young child. Shiju was the most suitable one among her war pets. If any accident happened while heading towards Huang Wuyo's sealed grounds, it would be terrible. Furthermore, Shiju had signed a contract with her. Shiju could sense her location. It could also bring Bloodbone Barbaric King and Feng Liqiang to follow her aura to look for her. Shiju obediently rubbed against Yi Qing Luo's palm and headed towards the foot of Devil Destruction Mountain, towards the direction where the tent was set up. seeing Shi Ju's figure disappearing. Yiqing Luo then leapt down from the tree as her pink dress fluttered in the wind. When she landed stably on the ground, her dress fluttered like peach blossoms in full bloom, extremely beautiful. She squinted at Long Ao. All right, let's go. Troublesome. Long Ao curled his lips as he spat out 2 words eerily. Following that, his black robe fluttered as he headed towards Devil Destruction Mountain. Yiqing Luo followed closely. Long Ao's speed was extremely fast. Even with Yiqing Luo's agility, she needed to be extremely serious before she could keep up. It showed that Long Ao's true ability had far exceeded her current understanding. Yiqing Luo wasn't sure. If Long Ao displayed a little more ability, under the premise that she didn't need to rely on the blink movement, would she be able to catch up to Long Ao? Yiqing Luo suppressed the suspicions she had towards Long Ao and didn't think too much about it. As long as he could grasp Long Ao's mind, even if she couldn't make Long Ao help her, at the very least, they couldn't become enemies. However, she was afraid that Long Ao was teasing her by leading this path, right? Was he bringing her around the Devil Destruction Mountain? They had already circled around Devil Destruction Mountain by more than 1 round. Long Ao didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. Yiqing Luo was contemplating if she should call out to Long Ao to have a good talk with him about the principles of life. At this moment, Long Ao's footsteps suddenly halted as he raised his palm and struck down towards Yiqing Luo. Wow, 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 wow. Yiqing Luo almost cursed out loud. Her fingers raised and the glower flame fan opened up, ready to strike back. That ghastly cold wind from his palm brushed past Yiqing Luo's side as it crashed onto a big tree behind her. Rumble. There was a deafening collapse. The tree fell down with a loud bang, and a deep pit was formed in the ground. Yiqing Luo, so that palm was not meant for her. Then what was the meaning of him hitting a tree? Was he trying to show off his might? Yiqing Luo turned her head as she looked at that huge, deep pit. Just as she was about to open her mouth, her peripheral vision suddenly swept. At the deep pit where the big tree had collapsed, a flight of stairs could be faintly seen extending down along the deep pit.